you see the note from Paul that he's going to be late?
I didn't. Okay. David, did he say how late he was going to be?
A few minutes.
Okay.
You have 517 participants.
Okay, wow.
Stream is now live. We're ready to start.
Okay, great. And Wade, can you start us off with roll call?
Yes, Mr. Badger, Mr. Bleefeld,
Here.
Mr. Frank,
Here?
Mrs. Ginsburg,
Here.
Mrs. Heyman,
Here.
Mrs. Karyonikis,
Here.
Mr. Stoloff,
Here.
Mrs. Walsh,
Here.
Mr. Antonio,
Here.
Olivia Welsh,
Here.
H. Benning,
Here.
8 board members present, 1 absent, 2 student board reps also joining us.
Great, thank you. And hopefully Paul will join us shortly. But it's now time for the Pledge of Allegiance. And again, please unmute so I'm not saying it alone. And John, can you display the flag?
Yep, queuing it up now.
Is it up?
Not yet.
There we go.
All right. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to
to the flag of the
United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and
and
justice
for
for
all.
all.
I'd like to welcome everyone to this July 13th, 2020 special meeting of the Wissahickon School District's Board of Directors. Our primary agenda item is a discussion about reopening schools for the fall. And before we get into that, though, we're going to have our first public comment period. And we gave people the opportunity to submit public comment and questions prior to this meeting. And we've consolidated all of them to read out during the first public comment period, and any subsequent questions that we've received after about 6 p.m. today, we will address as part of the second public comment period after the presentation and discussion of the school reopening plans.
Joe, can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Sure.
I just got a text from a parent that said that they can't get into Zoom and that it's not on YouTube.
John, can you take a look at that?
Well, we're over our attendee for the live Zoom, but it is playing right now on YouTube Live. I can see you.
YouTube
Okay.
Live, okay.
Yeah. So it looks like Paul has just joined. Paul, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I apologize. I had another meeting that went over. But
Yeah,
yes,
no
I'm
problem. So Wade, I guess, can you know for the record that Paul's here as well? Okay, so getting back to the first public comment period, I'm going to enlist my fellow board members to take some of the responsibilities for reading out the public comments that we've received prior to the meeting. And we're going to start off with Zephy, who will take the first set of public comments received prior to the meeting.
Great. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. The first group of questions are about health and safety protocol. First question, it's a multiple step question. What is the plan for students who are asked to quarantine? I can envision a scenario where students are exposed, quarantined for 2 weeks, go back to school, and the cycle repeats. Maybe they miss 4 out of 8 weeks of in-person school. Will they just have to keep up with schoolwork at home without any classroom recordings, or will classes be recorded for at-home viewing? I do not know how that would possibly work, but it seems to be like they would need more than just trying to keep up at home without seeing lessons. Submitted by Erin Crump on July 7th. Second question. At the elementary level, if temperatures are not going to be taken in school as a proactive measure, has the district considered being proactive in putting a policy in place to deter parents from giving their child Tylenol or Motrin and sending them to school? I know this happens during a regular school year and expect the same will still happen even with COVID. Submitted by Rachel Stolzenberg. Pardon me if I pronounce anyone's name incorrectly. Submitted July 9. Question 3. What is the district's plan for how plexiglass will be used and where? Also submitted by Rachel Stolzenberg, July 9th. Another one from the same. What are schools doing to check the water systems, i.e. stagnant water and air filtration systems? Also by Rachel Stolzberg, what will be the district's policy on a child coughing in the classroom? Are they allowed in the room if they have a negative COVID test and coughing, or are they required to stay home until the cough subsides? Another question, with the awareness that teachers may need to quarantine due to potential exposure or become ill, what measures or steps are the district putting in place to make sure that the kids maintain the pace of learning based on the district's scope and sequence, continuity of their education and rigor? I know all districts will be looking for subs, but what would be the plan if there were to fail to fill? Also submitted by Rachel. Can the district install hands-free automatic soap dispensers, sinks, and paper towel dispensers? If not, can the district have the restrooms cleaned throughout the day at least? Next question. For the students that will need to self-quarantine due to being in one of the high-risk states, is there any option to have the class be taught with a Zoom option so that students could dial in and not miss a full 2 weeks of instructions? Submitted by Lori Poulter, July 10th. Given the continued investigation into COVID's potential to be airborne and the recommendations for increased ventilation, what is the district doing to better improve their ventilation system in each building? Detailed specifics would be appreciated. Submitted by Catherine Lefevre on July 10th. Similarly, what if my child is exposed to COVID-19 outside of school and needs to be quarantined for 14 days? What are his options for continued learning? What will be the absentee policy? Will kids be exposed to stay home if they have a cough and or COVID-19 symptoms but no fever? Will children be reprimanded for missing more days than usual, as parents attempt to keep them home while they're displaying symptoms that normally would not keep them home? Will children be sent home from school if they display COVID-19 symptoms in school, but again, no fever? Will children be quarantined if their teachers test positive for COVID-19? What if a member of the support staff tests positive? Submitted by Allison Brennick Rogers on July 13th. What, if anything, what, if anything, has been done to improve the air circulation? Submitted by Carolyn May on July 13th. Could you please clarify how the district plans to handle what happens when a child gets sick? For example, if one child in a class gets a fever and is sent home, will the district be sending the entire class home? At the middle school, high school level, will the district be sending every child who has been in class home with the child as well? Similarly, what if a child is diagnosed with COVID? Will the entire class be expected to be quarantined? Submitted by Christina DiMatteo on July 13th. What steps has the district taken to acquire extra masks, hand sanitizer, and janitorial supplies and personnel to maintain the additional cleaning needed? Will plexiglass screens be installed around teachers' desks? Submitted by Rob Stavanger on July 13th. Will we be notified if anyone in the district, including full-time, part-time, and temporary staff, tests positive for COVID In the event that children are sick, what, if any, additional information will need to be provided in order for them to return to school? If someone tests positive for COVID, will children be required to be quarantined? If someone tests positive for COVID, will children be required to get tested? If children are required to be tested, will the district offer any assistance of any kind? If children are required to quarantine, will they immediately be switched to virtual? Submitted by Amy Hughes, July 13th. Quarantining. I have 3 kids in all 3 schools this year, high school, middle school, and Stony Creek. If a child in my son's class in the elementary school tests positive, not just exposed, but is positive for coronavirus, I'm assuming his whole class needs to quarantine for 2 weeks. If that is true, do my other children also need to quarantine? And if yes, what will their learning look like when their class still meeting face to face every day and they're stuck at home quarantining? Submitted by Kim Schreier on July 13th. Is the school district truly capable of providing a safe, socially distant environment for the children? The buildings are overcrowded, and we have yet to hear the specifics of any plan for keeping the children masked and socially distant, let alone for adequate precautionary measures such as frequent surface sanitation, contact tracing, and disclosure mechanisms to alert parents of potential exposure. Prior to opening, will you have a comprehensive plan for each of these items? Will parents learn the specifics of these plans prior to being forced to make a decision? Submitted by Ellen Goldrich on July 13th. Face coverings. Will face shields be acceptable for kids to wear when returning to school? They may be more comfortable and easier to wear for the younger kids in elementary school. If they are acceptable, could the school district order a bulk order in turn, saving everyone money so parents can order right from the district and the teachers can have a supply? Submitted by Kathleen DiClemente on July 9th. As far as face coverings for students, will schools permit mask, gaiters, and shields? What precautions or proactive steps will the district take to promote clean PPE being worn? There's no point in a child wearing a mask if the mask has not been cleaned since the previous day. Submitted by Rachel Stolzenberg on July 9th. Will kids be allowed to wear the neck gaiter type mask, and or will they be allowed to wear baseball hats with mask attachments so their ears don't hurt? Submitted by Amanda Cobb on July 13th. Virtual option. Families juggling home, virtual school, and jobs need flexibility. Can work be posted for the week so we can have more flexibility to complete assignments from one day to the next? If not possible for parents who work, it is not possible for parents who work 3 12-hour shifts to operate a daily 8 to 4 school day. Submitted by Lynn Platt on July 13th. I have questions about what specifically the district is working on to enhance the virtual school experience. How will the work be more challenging? Will there be more synchronous learning? At the end of the year, my son's first grade class started to break into smaller groups by level of understanding, and this was very effective. Will more of this be done? Submitted by Laura Dawson, July 13th. If students are forced to return to school the traditional way, what options are available to parents who refuse to send their kids back? Will the virtual academy extend to grade school students? Submitted by Aja Gordon on July 13th. What is the difference between the WSD virtual choice and the distance learning program that will most likely will need to implement if there's a case and the school is closed for an extended period of time? Submitted by Carolyn May, July 13th. If a child starts in the virtual program at the middle school or high school, but then wants to transition back to regular school at the end of the first semester, how will that work if the course offerings do not match? Submitted by Christina Di Matteo on July 13th. And I believe here I transferred to Amy. Amy, I'm at question 25.
Thank you, Zephy. Can everyone hear
Thanks,
me?
Amy. Yes.
Thank you. I am wondering what the structure of the virtual option will be for elementary school students. What platforms will be used, and will there be live classes? Will there be an online interaction with classmates? Will current elementary school teachers be teaching this? Submitted by Dion Morris on 7/13. In regards to the virtual option for elementary students, will parents be informed of the following prior to being asked to commit to a decision? This information is needed for parents of young children to plan how to manage at-home schooling when both parents work. Hours, day of schoolwork anticipated for each grade, how much live schooling there will be, and what time of day that will occur, as specific as possible, how much involvement from a parent is expected to be needed for each grade, what accommodations will be made for children who cannot make the live schooling due to their parents' work schedule. And that was submitted by Kara Finn on 7/13. I understand that the previously discussed third option is now off the table. What were the main factors in arriving at this decision? How was this decision made? And who made the final decision to focus on only two options? And that was submitted by Amy Hughes on 7/13. I have another one from Amy Hughes on 7/13. If one option is chosen for the start of the school year, may that option be changed at any time. The next question is, first, could you give me more details about the virtual learning option at the elementary level? Our daughter will be entering first grade. The Q&A document mentioned there will be dedicated teachers for this, but how long would she need to be on Zoom or receive live instruction each day? For example, she just finished a virtual summer camp week that went extremely well with a teacher on Zoom from 1 to 4 with 10-minute breaks on the hour and lots of interaction and engagement with other kids. The Q&A noted there will be more rigor around the virtual option. Can you elaborate on what will be different in the fall with remote learning? Second, I presume that once you choose, there is no going back, correct? If we go with virtual or in person, we cannot switch later if it's not working out and we have a change of heart. And that was submitted by Holly Fair on 7/13. For the virtual option, will it be live stream from the classroom? If not, why? Many school districts do this, and it is important to maintain a consistent and universal learning environment for children to feel part of their community, even if they were doing so virtually. Families that choose this option should not be forced to choose between the risk of a deadly virus and their children obtaining the same experience as those who are sending their children to school. And that was submitted by Ellen Goldrich on 7/13. For the 100% distance learning option, you stated that a Wissahickon teacher will be the student's teacher. If my child is entering kindergarten, will the teacher be a current Wissahickon kindergarten teacher? Also, you stated one teacher. Does that mean they won't have instruction in special area classes such as music, art, and gym? Lastly, will any instruction take place synchronously with this option? Why isn't Wissahickon Virtual Academy being offered to K through 6 students? And that was submitted by Madison Green on 7/13. The next one's a little bit longer. My daughter goes to Shady Grove Elementary School. A previous message from the Wissahickon School District described virtual learning instruction as taking place much like it did this past spring, with added elements of accountability and rigor. This statement concerns me as there is little active teaching and a lot of assigned work without accompanying support. My daughter saw her teacher in live video approximately 6 times the entire shutdown period, all of which were for less than 20 minutes and not for the purpose of teaching. This was disappointing, but something we could swallow given the suddenness of the transition. Going forward with 7 months to plan, design, and prepare, I was anticipating much more than virtual learning looking much like it did this past spring. I hope that this evening's meeting will fully explain what added elements of accountability and rigor are being implemented. If there are plenty of clearly defined checks and balances in place to ensure that by choosing virtual learning for our children, it will not unduly hinder their education. Many more parents will select virtual learning. That would result in smaller person in headcount and will result in greater ability to social distance those students who are attending in person. I would like to hear the following specific requirements as they relate to virtual learning. Total minimum hours of live video conference education required per day. Confirmation that a technology training plan is in place to train the students on accessing and utilizing the tools. Plans to standardize the technology choices. Younger children should not be expected to locate, log into, and utilize 5 different web platforms, especially where the additional technology selected provides no advantageous distinction from the other tools. Specific grading plans, including which courses will and will not be graded and how grading will be determined. The plans for reporting and mitigating issues such as technology complexity, subpar teacher engagement, etc. I would also like to hear confirmation that anyone who selects virtual learning can switch back to in-person attendance should virtual learning end up providing a substantially lesser education than in-person would have. Assuming this meeting is structured like the previous one, where questions received prior to the meeting are reviewed and answered at the beginning and additional questions received during the meeting are covered at the end, please provide a 10-minute notice before closing down the windows to submit follow-up questions so that everyone can hold off on asking questions that may be answered further into the meeting. And that was submitted by Jonathan Schreiber on 7/13. The next section is called in-person option. The most likely scenario is that in-person reopening of schools will increase community transmission of COVID-19. What is uncertain is the degree of increase and the associated public health trade-off. To provide some data to evaluate before broader implementation, while also mitigating potential public health issues, would the district consider having only one class per grade in a school, example for elementary, and one pod, example for the middle school, return to in-person school for the first 2 months, and survey the number of students and staff that test positive for COVID-19 and evidence of school transmission. Parents who wish to do so would volunteer for their children to participate in the in-person attendance option and be selected on a lottery basis. School would remain virtual for all of their students during this time. If all goes well, an in-person option of return to school will be offered to all children in the district after 2 months, the end of October. This would also allow schools to assess what is and is not working well with in-person COVID-related protocols, learning before potentially expanding more broadly. And that was submitted by Ralph Insignia on 7/13. In case of in-person classes, can you kindly list the precautions which the school district is planning to take? And are these measures being discussed and vetted by a doctor or a virologist, or is it being based on common sense? And that was submitted by Abhijit Nath on 7/13. I'm sorry if I'm saying any names incorrectly. The next session is called hybrid option. Why is the hybrid option now off the table? The safety of all children should be paramount and should take priority over all other considerations, including concerns regarding funding and the public provisions of childcare. And that was submitted by Ellen Goldrich on 7/13. Is the hybrid option still off the table? It seems like many districts of all sizes are planning for this, and the safest option and most sustainable for the entire year to keep students in school as often as possible. That was submitted by Madison Green on 7/13. Is there a hybrid model, mix of in-person and online, which the school district is thinking about? If yes, how will that work? That was submitted by Abhijit Nath on 7/13. The next section covers technology and resources. Does the district have enough technology for each student to receive their own device, iPad or laptop? That was submitted by Rachel Stolzenberg on 7/9. We use WebEx, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Business Skype to conduct web video conferences with teams located globally for our work on a daily basis these days. In fact, these technologies are most widely used in many counties for school purposes. Some examples: Settlement Music School, Philadelphia uses Business Skype to teach and conduct concerts. Human uses Zoom to conduct their classes. Why is the school district not thinking about leveraging these great IT tools and conduct virtual classes for everyone? I see the students have Microsoft Teams installed in their laptops already. The laptops have webcams enabled. And that was also submitted by Abhijit Nath on 7/13. The next section is called transportation. What happens with the North Monco Tech students? If they choose virtual academy, can they still take bus transportation from the high school to and from the tech school? And that was submitted by Amy, no last name listed, on 7/10. The next section is called social and emotional well-being. How is the school going to balance COVID safety with active shooter safety? What mental health initiatives will be put into place to help students at all ages with stress, social isolation, anxiety, etc., in an effort to prevent school shootings or suicide? And that was also submitted by Rachel Stolzenberg on 7/9. And I think I'm passing now to,
David.
Who's next? I'm sorry.
David Frank.
David, that's what I thought. Okay.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? How's my audio?
Good, David.
That's great.
Good, thanks. The next section is entitled or organized into remote teaching and learning / stay-at-home order. What metrics will be used to determine if in-person learning ceases? Will we be following state mandates only, or will any sort of additional measures be applied to determine if schools should close? For example, if a case is found in the school or in the family of a student If our local community has a certain level or rate of increase of coronavirus cases, can the criteria for closing schools please be shared before parents must make a commitment to in-person versus remote learning? That was submitted by Alexis Wasserman. Next comment is from Lynn Platt. The email states virtual learning for the fall will be similar to the spring, but with more vigor. While I understand live recordings are difficult, will there be lengthy videos of teachers teaching concepts daily before assignments are to be completed? I felt the spring was more like homework of previously learned concepts, not teachers teaching new material as they would in the classroom. Can't Wissahickon provide a better program for children below 7th grade? Aren't there virtual charter programs you could purchase and use? You say the virtual charters do not have great success, but we cannot compare it to in-school teaching at Wissahickon because I doubt the online program this spring was equivalent either. As a working parent with 2 children learning at home, we need significant virtual instruction or it becomes homeschooling. Will a sample or detailed description of these virtual programs be shown? Difficult to make a decision when you have nothing tangible to review. Is it Microsoft Teams? How are teachers teaching the new material? Can the outline curriculum and a sample of how the program looks be available online to parents to review now? Again, that was from Lynn Platt. Next comment or question, if my children return to physical school and the school is closed for cleaning or by governor's orders, what is your plan to educate those children during the closure? That was from Allison Brennick Rogers. The next 3 comments are gathered or grouped in the category of focus groups / survey. So the first question from Rachel Stolzenberg, how were parents chosen to be on the focus groups and how many parents were involved for each level? Next from Shafali Dar, could the initial survey results be shared with the parents? And finally from Amy Hughes, are we or may we be provided with the results of the survey that was conducted? And the next category is elementary specific questions. First from Rachel Stolzenberg, how will instruction look in the elementary classroom, which relies on small group instruction? Will there be small group instruction in the elementary regular ed classrooms? Next comment is from Carolyn May. What will a typical day look like, i.e. from drop off to pickup? Where will the students be throughout the day? Will students be kept in pods, interacting with same group of people only? What will the environment look like? That is plexiglass dividers for teachers' desks, plexiglass for student cubes, etc. If we do not have encore classes, can we stagger start and end times? That was from Carolyn May. Next comment is from Amy Hughes. Please explain in detail how the virtual learning at the elementary level will differ from last year. More rigorous, in quotation marks, does not provide enough information for a decision. The next category is secondary specific questions. What plans are in place for high school students who attend North Montco Technical Career School? That was from Asia Gordon. Next question is from Allison Brennick Rogers. What about seniors? If my senior chooses to participate in a Wissahickon Virtual Academy, will there be a problem obtaining letters of recommendation from teachers and transcripts that need to be sent to colleges? Not all classes offered at Wissahickon High School are offered at Wissahickon Virtual Academy and vice versa. How do you propose students transition between the two if they would like to use the alternate option for the spring semester? Next comment is from Dave Cherkis. We're asking specifically for middle and high school. Why can't WIS have synchronous learning environment? Seems teachers would have who would otherwise, seems teachers who would have otherwise taught in person can do so via Teams. We're not losing sight of obvious issues with certain activities such as science lab and physical education as two examples. However, it seems the majority of the students' school day can be taught virtually using the same teachers as the students would have if physically in school. Perhaps the teachers are in their respective classrooms, materially reducing the amount of people inside a building, and the students are remote via Teams. Seems it could provide for a second best situation for the learning to be interactive and collaborative. In the event there is a disruption, school closure, or teacher having to quarantine, some degree of consistency is available to the students. Thank you. Next comment. Given the current pandemic, it seems like having the first semester as fully online in a synchronous setting would be a good idea. This will keep everyone, staff, students, and their families safe, and all the students in sync with everything they are doing. The school district resources could then be channeled appropriately to making this one option successful. If the above of only online is not an option, following are my questions for the WVA option, the virtual academy option. Since this selection is for the first semester only, if my son comes back to in-person for spring, will he continue to be placed in the courses he's enrolled in? Will the curriculum taught online in the virtual academy and in person at school be in sync? WSIC and virtual academy class meetings are asynchronous. Is there a way to make online courses synchronous for the upcoming year? Students would be more engaged in that format. Will additional courses be added to the virtual academy? For example, my son had planned on taking German 4, which is currently not in the course list. That was submitted by Shafali Dar. Next comment or question. My question concerns high school students who choose virtual learning. If a student chooses virtual learning and the district moves from in-person learning to virtual, would my daughter have to stay with non-WSIC teachers, or would she be given opportunity to continue with district teachers and classmates? Are virtual learners allowed to join clubs and participate in sports if they are to continue? As I write this, Pennsylvania is reporting an increase in cases, so I highly doubt WSIC will be holding in-person classes, putting our children and community at risk. And that was submitted by Andrea Cocadrilli on July 13th. The next area is staffing. Let's see. What about substitutes? When my kids were in elementary school, classes were frequently unable to obtain substitutes, and the class was split between the other teachers of the same grade. Will there be an adequate number of substitutes to handle teachers leaving for illness? As we know, there will be more teacher absences, as I'm assuming they will not be allowed to return to work if they display COVID-19 symptoms until a negative COVID-19 test is confirmed. Will these substitute teachers be adequately trained to teach higher level suspect subjects, including calculus and AP classes? That was from Allison Brennick Rogers. Next from Rob Stavanger. How are the teachers, administrative, and support staff's views being collected? How many of them are supportive of an in-school opening? From Amy Hughes. How does the district plan to handle the teachers and staff who elect not to return in person? Will they be offered alternative positions such as virtual? And another question from Amy Hughes. Is the district adequately prepared to hire long-term subs, temporary subs, etc. for all positions? What details are you able to provide? I think I'm going to stop there and turn it over to whoever's next in line.
That would
I
be
think there were a
Ron.
few- Okay.
Ron, you're on mute. Hey, Ron, you're on mute.
Now, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. General comments. Overall, I believe the district did a good job last spring with the short notice they were given regarding school closures. However, Unless something big changes in this country, I only foresee a very disrupted in-person school year next semester. I realize a hybrid model is off the table at this point, however. It would be extremely helpful to have an option that if the school closes again on short notice or a child is absent for quarantine or other illnesses, they're able to continue some type of quality classroom education learning. And this is from Allison Bennick Rogers on 713. Next, my kid goes to Stony Creek Elementary. I'm a local physician and I'm 100% for opening schools like normal and not having my two elementary age girls have to wear masks all day. People who do not want this and have the resources to stay at home and cyber school have the right to choose, but it does not work as well the other way. So I feel a normal opening needs to be offered. Otherwise, I would consider pulling my kids out of the public system for a private option, which would hurt your funding. I do not want to have to do that. My girls love Stony Creek and their teachers. I hope you can make this option happen. Thank you for your time. And that's from Dave Bozak and from 713. Next, Dr. Crisfield and the Wisconsin School Board. We understand that the COVID-19 situation is unprecedented within living memory and coupled with ever-shifting mandates and scientific recommendations leaves you with an unenviable, difficult task, putting it mildly. One, with regard to the plans for in-person learning, we are concerned that there may not be a robust, effective plan for students who are forced to school from home. This could be triggered by district, county, or statewide conditions forcing shutdowns, along with almost inevitable large-scale student body quarantines due to infection or even exposure. Other school districts were able to provide reasonably rigorous academic programs utilizing significant synchronous class interactions this spring. The Wisconsin School District needs to be prepared to implement something comparable to the other districts in the fall. Two, consider calling for community volunteers for the preparation efforts. Both parents and students could help prepare for the return to school, doing everything from fabricating and or installing desk shields to setting up cameras in classroom for remote participation. There is a wealth of talent in our community. Let us help you help the students. Thank you for your efforts in guiding the school through this, and that's submitted by David and Susan Rothschild, 713. I realize this is a lengthy one. I realize everyone would like to have a normal return to in-school classes, but I think most people agree it is not possible. Several points about the current plans in the district. Point, a mixed model should not be dismissed outright. There is, in many options, a high likelihood to have additional school closures and or large-scale quarantines of student and staff. Therefore, having a mixed model up and running will minimize the disruption and concurrently class sizes. Next point. To the point above, the school should consider streaming classes, especially the larger ones. This could allow for A, the ability of students to follow the instructions from different locations within the school, or B, the opportunity of continuity of instruction should a student need quarantine. Next point, masks should be required. Even with less than perfect hygiene, masks can provide some protection from transmission. Next point, temperatures should be checked prior to entering school. Temp checks do not filter asymptomatic carriers, but they will identify kids and staff with the fever who technically should not be in school anyway. Next point, some short-sighted suggestions on social media here and across the country have suggested that students or their families who would be considered high risk should consider a virtual school option. The school, the board, and the community have a responsibility to make the school as safe as possible for all students and staff. Therefore, students and staff should be required to wear a mask and have a temp check. Those who are not comfortable with these requirements should then choose the virtual schooling option rather than force the entire school population into a less safe environment. That's Rob Stavinger. Whoops. Okay. Next. Whoops, sorry about that. If it is not safe enough for board members and district administration to meet in person to discuss reopening schools, it is not safe enough to send students and staff back into the buildings. Even in school, with face-to-face instruction, teaching and learning will not be of the same caliber to which Wissahickon families are accustomed. The hands-on, engaging, collaborative activities that make our classrooms so great are not safe in the COVID-19 climate. The socialization that is so essential for student-child development cannot take place in typical ways either, as students may not go near one another, speaking aloud will be limited, and touching, sharing materials will be prohibited. It has been said that if teachers are not comfortable returning to work, they should find a new profession. Please let it be known that nowhere in a teacher's job description or undergraduate, graduate training are they required or trained to act as human shields, bodyguards, doctors, sanitation workers, or babysitters. School is not daycare. Teachers unwilling to risk their health and that of the students are not selfish or unfit for their profession. They are concerned for their own safety and well-being of their students. And it appears that those who care for the safety and quality of human life are in the minority here. Please do not sacrifice your children or their teachers, school staff in your efforts to return to normal. The risk is simply too high, and that's submitted by Tom Scott, 713. If it is not yet safe to hold in-person board meetings with masks, why would it be safe for students to return to regular classes, if even with an altered schedule, where board meetings resume in-person meetings beginning on 8/31, and that's by John Lee. Okay. And to the school board, this is a rather lengthy piece, I think. The virus has a rapidly changing impact and the future is not predictable. So the district must be prepared for the worst case scenario, which would be a complete shutdown of the schools again. It is very possible that Pennsylvania experiences a second wave sometime during the next school year. It is possible a second wave is brought on by the very fact thousands of students return to the classrooms. I want to believe that this district, which is a leader among school districts in Pennsylvania and the US, has a leadership, technology, and financial resources to implement a solution which solves for a possible shutdown, as well as serves all of the differing needs and desires of the parents. Clearly, there are two different groups of parents. There are those who prefer their students to learn virtually and those who prefer their children to attend in person. No one will dispute that both sets have valid concerns that need to be addressed. So how does the school board address both parents' sets of concerns and prepare for a possible complete shutdown? I believe there is a third option that the school board has not pursued, which should be applied for middle school and high school students. When the virus first hit corporate America, within 2 weeks, every major corporation set up its employees to work from home and to communicate via video conferencing using Zoom. Every employee was provided with a Zoom dial-in number so they could arrange for their own conferences. Employees downloaded Zoom to their laptops or home desktops and obtained a computer camera if they did not already have one. This was neither difficult to implement nor costly. I propose that the school district conduct classes in the classrooms according to a normal schedule where students change classes as they normally would do. In addition, each teacher would have their own Zoom dial-in conference number, and each classroom would be equipped with an overhead camera and microphone, which would tie into the internet, so that classroom lectures would be broadcast via Zoom. Students who are working virtually from home would dial into the Zoom conference and be able to view and hear the teacher's lectures. When each class is over, The students at home would proceed to the next proceed on the same schedule as they would if they were physically in the school, and do so by dialing into the next teacher's Zoom number. With regard to homework and exams, it is my understanding all of these are circulated, completed, and submitted by Schoology. So there would be no need to change or implement anything new in this regard. If an exam were given, the students would work virtually. The students working virtually would have to submit their completed exam by Schoology before the end of the class period, just like students who would be taking the exam physically in the classroom. A Zoom camera image can be adjusted in size on one's computer screen, so students working virtually could view both the teacher and textbook or other written materials simultaneously on their laptop as the teacher lectures. If a laptop has a working microphone, and this goes on, okay.
Ron, I'm gonna stop you there. Those
Right.
comments have exceeded the 3-minute time limit.
Okay, right, okay, thank
The
you.
rest of it kind of continues in more detail about the implementation of
Right, and lots of suggestions.
some kind of
Okay.
live stream.
And this is by Michael Yulesman. So somebody want to pick up at this point, or should I continue?
I believe that was
that's the end.
the last of the submitted comments.
Okay,
And so thank you, Ron and Zephy, Amy, and David. So just to clarify for folks, prior to this meeting, we gave folks the opportunity to submit comments that we had stated would be part of the meeting minutes. And we were in essence trying to attempt the public comment periods that we would have in the in-person meetings that we used to have pre-COVID, where folks would have the opportunity to come to the podium and address us as board members. So obviously that's not possible. And to try to simulate that, I mean, again, we gave folks the opportunity to submit their written comments. And there were quite a few, as you can see, and what we've been listening to for the past, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes at this point. But even though there were many, and there was an overlap maybe in some of the questions and the topics, we felt it was important just to honor the fact that those comments were submitted in advance to us, and we did say that we would read them out and make them part of the meeting minutes. So thanks everyone for bearing with us as we went through all the comments. What I'm hoping is that the questions that were raised in the comments read out loud will be addressed or at least touched upon by Jim and his team as they present with us, the board, and the public, their school reopening plans. And if after that discussion and presentation, there are still open questions, we can have some follow-up that the administration can do with some frequently asked questions or some kind of document after this meeting. So with that, I'm going to hand things off to Jim, who will talk to us about the school reopening plans. Jim?
Okay, thank you. I know it's been a long one already, but we had some important questions to ask. So what I'm going to try to do is share a screen and have a presentation that I think I'll try to get through it first. And there's a lot of information here. There's not as much information, or perhaps not as many details as everyone would like, but there are a lot of details. And then we can discuss, next steps and that sort of thing from there. Just want to make sure, can everybody see is the Zoom for the, okay, good. So let's go ahead and start this. Let me get out of there so I don't. Okay. So this is presentation 2. The first one was back in June, and it's going to have a similar format, and I hope to have many more details tonight for everybody. The purpose, as I say, is that we have some major outstanding issues, and then at the end, we'll hopefully, as Joe Antonio pointed out, we'll have touched on many of those topics. And I'll share with everyone a way to get additional detailed questions answered as well moving forward. So our priorities remain unchanged from the last time we spoke, which is these 3 very important areas. Some people value one more than the other. We value all 3 of them highly. That's all I can say. They're very, very important. We have some guiding principles, and that is to be realistic as to what we can do. I don't know how to really describe it other than our capacity as a decision-making entity is stretched to the absolute max right now. And that's not uncommon. Districts all over have that problem. So we're trying to be realistic as to what we can actually do. We are trying to sift through the literally thousands of pages of guidance from experts. People send me links, which is nice. I have state level, national level, professional organization level pages of guidance. Helpful, often contradictory, and we're trying to follow them as best we can. Our guiding principle is there is a continuum of safeguards at work here. All of these guidance documents have, dozens and dozens of areas that they suggest to do this and they suggest to do that. One of our guiding principles is if we fall short in one of the areas, then we need to see if we can do better in another one. And the net is getting to a place that's acceptable, or at least that most people would find is acceptable. So we can't possibly meet every single recommendation. If we fall short one on the continuum, we'll hopefully make up for it in another place. Guiding principle, minimize number of people and maximize outdoor time. That's a pretty well-established way of preventing the spread, and principals and teachers are challenged to get creative in this regard. They're going to like that? No, because it's hard. And if it's pouring out, obviously it's not possible. But we have creative people, and I know they can figure something out. So we have complications. All of these official guidance documents are oftentimes contradictory. One says you need to have 6 feet. The other one says you need to have 3 feet. One says you got to have masks. One other says no. All these other things. And we're trying to kind of like let the common threads percolate to the top and pick them. But you would be amazed at how often these official guidance documents contradict one another. Likewise, these official guidance documents change almost overnight. American Association of Pediatricians literally over the weekend changed from all students have to be in to, well, if students don't have to get in, maybe that's not the worst thing in the world. And that's not bad. They're not the boss of us. We use their guidance as one of many, many sources, but that's an example of things changing literally overnight. And then this other complication, I'm going to try to put this delicately, but everyone in our country, including everyone in Wissahickon as a community, falls on a spectrum of how we as a society should be dealing with this crisis. And we have people at all ends of this, both ends of the spectrum and everywhere in between. And as you all have found out, passions run high on either end. So that's a complication for us, because as soon as, for example, I'm going to say tonight we are complying with the governor's order on face coverings, I know I can guarantee that I will receive tomorrow emails from people telling me I'm crazy because they're passionate about no face coverings, and vice versa. So it's a trick, it's a complication, we're dealing with it, but I just want us to all keep in mind that for every opinion on these things, there are other opinions out there. So we're just trying to balance things as best we can. So our options for the fall, now getting into the meat of the presentation. We have an option number one. This is back, these were presented in June, and I'm going to share with everyone what they look like and what grades they would apply to. You recall we had these three options. Option one, in person every day. Option two, some sort of hybrid, maybe every other day, maybe split session. And option three, 100% virtual. So those were our starting points. Now, a little bit more detail on option number one. This is where we stand now, is this is the only in-person option available for students in grades K to 5. Okay, so I'm gonna repeat that. Elementary school, grades K to 5, this is our one and only in-person option. All students back, all day, every day.
Hey,
Now,
Jim,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt. Do you want us to, are we can we ask questions during the course of your slides, or would you prefer to wait till the end, or how do you want us to?
Whatever you prefer.
Well, I guess what I'd like is to hear more about your and the team's rationale for having this option when all students back being the primary option, or really the only option for grades K through 5.
All right, you read my mind. Just hold on for a couple of slides.
Okay.
An example of how things are changing is as of basically today, or maybe recently, this option of all students back isn't viable in grades 6 to 12. In other words, it's not viable in middle school or high school. And we're going to talk a little bit about that below. So just to be clear, option number 1, all students back, is what we're planning for grades K to 5 and is not what we're planning for grades 6 to 12. We're going to go over rationale in a minute. So what does it look like in the elementary school when all kids are back? Concept is to maximize distancing as much as humanly possible. So in a classroom, desks will be between 4 and 6 feet apart. That's much more than they are now. Students will sit facing the same way, minimizing the use of tables. If we have to use them, they'll sit on either end of the table, which is 4 to 6 feet apart from one another. And then there'll be another row of desks or tables that are 4 or 6 feet apart. We're going backwards in time in terms of what classrooms are going to look like. But that's the only way that any school can get distancing. You can no longer at elementary school have a pod of 4 kids sitting around a table. I mean, there was an option to have plastic screens, partitions up. They have to go with the student. You can't share those. So you lose the movement piece of elementary classrooms anyway. So it'll look like desks apart, everyone facing the same way. Idea is to limit movement as much as possible. So perhaps encore classes will be taught in the classroom. We will try to minimize how often kids are out in the hallway. Of course, they'll be allowed to go out to the restroom if they need to, what have you. But generally speaking, not as much movement, which is another step backwards. We all know in a kindergarten classroom that movement is just about the first thing you build into a lesson plan. But you can't accomplish distancing with a whole lot of movement. I mentioned earlier, get outside as much as possible, either outdoor classrooms or recess or just to be outside. And face coverings will be required at all times. We're going to talk a little bit more specifically about face coverings, but just to give everyone a flavor of what it looks like, face coverings will be required at all times. There are some exceptions, and again, we'll get to those in a second. Now, the hybrid. To Joe's question, this is not being considered for grades K to 5 at this time, and we're not going to. Why? Those are the age of those students, we have heard, creates the childcare concerns that we can't meet. We don't know how to meet them. We can't partner up with a Y to use buildings because we'd be using the buildings anyway ourselves. We also know that younger students, in this case, grades K to 5, really don't do well with asynchronous learning on average. Older students on average do. So those two things, there's a logistical reason for this. Our schools are small. So if with only 3 sections of, say, grade 3 or 4 sections, say, it would be very unlikely that we'd have the perfect break to have one of them be hybrid. And then kids would be, so if we didn't, then some kids would be in school every day in Mrs. Smith's classroom, some wouldn't. And we just couldn't see how that would work. So option 2 is not considered for grades K to 5. Now, this is a change from the survey, and we're going to talk about the survey in a second. This is what we feel is the only in-person solution for grades 6 to 12. This would be an every other day arrangement where everybody start with the letter A or B or what, you know, and it's not gonna be perfect, but every other day students are in, the other day they're out with asynchronous learning that their teacher has arranged for and has planned out for them. And then she'll see them all the next day, and we just keep leapfrogging like that. One of the things that generated this change is that I'm not sure, I don't think anyone is sure how long Governor Wolf's face covering order will be in place. As long as it is, you have to have a mask on if you're less than 6 feet apart from people. And we just couldn't, one of the problems is we couldn't figure out how to do that consistently at the secondary level with the passing, with lunches. Just think about the high school's knuckle. You would have, and it's not like you can have one class of students at the secondary level just go on to their next class. It doesn't work that way because all the AP Bio students then disperse. Some go to math, some go to English. And so you can't have it as regimented as you might and as planned out and as segmented as you can at the elementary level.
Jim, can I ask a question about this slide?
Sure.
So as far as the option 2 for K through 5, this was not included in our survey.
That's correct.
The parents. So how do we know that there's a lack of interest in this area? I've heard from some parents that they would be interested in this hybrid model. They might feel safer sending their kids. And there are parents that don't look to the school for childcare.
I agree. I
work from home.
agree. And it wasn't included because we could not figure out a way how to offer it and option number 1 at the same time.
Couldn't we have one section if we have 4 kindergartens or 4 first grades, have one section in each grade that's dedicated for this model that's hybrid?
If it broke that way, it could be possible. We didn't want to leave it to chance at the end of the month, maybe like into August, and we find that not enough people choose the hybrid option. We thought about combining kids from schools to go to different neighborhood schools. Didn't see how that would work. We just didn't feel, we knew there was interest, and we're going to talk about surveys in a second. Survey is a good way for us to get a sense or pulse of things, and we wished we had included this grade 6 to 12 in the recent survey. We didn't, but it was just a late development. So it wasn't included not on purpose. It wasn't included because things are changing so fast we can barely keep up. I think that's the best way I can put it.
I think it would have been helpful though to find out the K through 5 level if we have enough interest to do that. Because some parents might be concerned sending the kids back every day, but might not be concerned sending them.
I don't disagree. I just don't know. We just couldn't figure out, even if there was interest, we couldn't figure out how to meet it. So knowing that there was interest wasn't going to help us because we just couldn't see how we could do it. Okay, so what does it look like in grades 6 to 12, which is where it'll be? Come to school every other day. We're working on the impact on athletics and extracurriculars. Everybody will be welcome. The problem is if you're at home that day, you got to get back to school for practice. If indeed we still have practice, but that's another matter. And it will look like face coverings at all times, same as in elementary.
Jim, I'm confused because on the last slide, you said that high school and middle school can't go back full-time because they don't wear face coverings?
No, because we can't guarantee 6 feet at all times. And if you were wearing a face covering, that in a hallway, that's okay if you are, but lunch was a major sticking point that we couldn't figure out how to do that. And we weren't comfortable with the hallways and the knuckle with the governor's at all times edict.
I mean, I don't know, personally, I think that the secondary level kids can figure out how to wear a face mask and follow those directions. So to me, sorry, having some work done. To me, the problem then would be lunch. and figuring out how to have the kids coming in every day and doing lunch.
Well, there's another piece of this, and the reason that hybrids across the country are gaining, or not gaining, but have advocates, is that it just naturally has fewer kids in the building. I should say, fewer students in the building, and generally speaking, that's a good idea if you can make it happen. To prevent, as a general principle, to prevent the spread. So. Like I said, there's going to be some people who are good with things, some aren't, but you're raising good questions. And generally speaking, I agree, older students will have a much easier time with face coverings than will younger students. And we're going to get to the governor's order in a second, but that was not a distinction from him. Okay, the fully virtual.
I'm sorry, can I just follow up on Tracy's question?
Sure.
You can't maintain the 6 feet in the middle school and high school, and that's one of our reasons for doing the hybrid model. How are we doing that at the elementary level, especially like my kids go to Stony Creek, it's overcrowded. How are we doing this?
We lunchtime, we believe we have figured out for 6 feet. We can utilize different spaces, increase it, and we're going to talk about that later also, increase the numbers of lunch periods, and we think we have it figured out at the elementary level. I mean, it's not going to look the same, and it's not going to be awesome all the time, and sometimes it's going to be in the classroom, and sometimes it's going to be somewhere else, and sometimes it'll be in the lunchroom, and sometimes it'll be lunch at 10:30 or earlier, and later, it's just going to stretch things out a little bit. It's just another example, a good example, Stoney's a good example of a challenge for sure. Okay, the fully virtual option is, as we know, students choose to be home every day, remote instruction. This will be an option. Families can opt into this if they want it. It does need to be by semester. And they can change after one semester if they want. And it will look different at the K-6 level, and that's an accurate, that's K-6 is correct, it's not K-5. K-6 is going to look different than 7-12, and we're going to, and the reason is as follows. Next slide. So what I'm going to show you next is what the 100% remote instruction option looks like should families choose this option at the beginning of the year, beginning of the semester. Okay. Busy slide, didn't know how to really get the details to any other way. There's 3 columns. The left column discusses or lists various program aspects. And then the 2 other columns are the 2 different schemes, either K-6 or 7-12. An obvious, they're both Pennsylvania standards based, so that's good. Core academics or core is the same. The big difference is at the K-6 level, almost all the instruction is synchronous, which is a huge difference, as you know, and we've heard from comments and parents compared to spring. K-6 instruction is synchronous. Now that has some challenges to it because that means there's a set time where Johnny has to be in front of the computer for this or that activity. And that's awesome for some parents and that's not awesome for other parents. And we know that. We'll try to work around that, but we listened to the feedback about synchronous. We know that there's more that's needed. And so that's where our K-6 program is going. On the other hand, 7-12 is our Wissahickon Virtual Academy. That exists now. It's existed for a couple years. Haven't had that many students in it yet. It's essentially an entire virtual experience asynchronous. It's facilitated by Montgomery Virtual Program, which is a organization that the MCIU helps organize. K-6 program will be Wissahickon teachers. We anticipate having, for example, 1 first grade teacher for all of the virtual kids in the district, which is different from the hybrid because we can do that. Everyone's virtual, so they'll be mixed in with the kids from the other 3 schools, but it's all virtual anyway. They're going to have classmates. It's just going to be from 3 other schools. And a Wissahickon teacher following Wissahickon curriculum. In grades 7 to 12, we're using our virtual academy model, which is pretty common across the state for virtual academies. MVP has got, it's standards based, it's good instruction, it's just asynchronous, which is not ideal, but high school students have mentioned every now and then they don't mind sleeping in and doing their classwork later. So anyway.
Hey, Jim, a question about the Montgomery virtual program.
Sure.
Last school year, we launched Wissahickon Virtual Academy in partnership with the MCIU. It essentially being this Montgomery virtual program behind the scenes as basically a cyber option for parents who didn't want to go to school full time. But with that option, my understanding was that students at Wissahickon High School, if they wanted to be in the Wissahickon Virtual Academy, needed to first withdraw from the high school and then enroll at Wissahickon Virtual Academy. Like it was in essence kind of like a separate standalone school. That was kind of my understanding. For this option being described here, would parents be able to participate in this Montgomery virtual program without having to first withdraw from the high school and then to enroll in the Wissahickon Virtual Academy?
I was not familiar with them having to technically withdraw. I'm gonna have to verify that, Joe. If so, we would see what we can do to not have that happen. I'm not sure about that. Our goal in the Wissahickon Virtual Academy is to have these students be Wissahickon students in every way. We issue them a computer device. They can participate in any extracurricular athletics teams they want. They get support from our teachers, either writing lab or math lab or after school. They can come into the buildings and be a regular student. Before this year, it was really more about it being convenient because they had a special athletic commitment or something at work, something working on their schedule. I'll check. Well, I'm going to make a note to check on having to withdraw or not.
Well, obviously, it'd be much simpler if folks could switch into the virtual program without having to first withdraw from the high school and then re-enroll in a virtual program.
Let's do this. Let's just assume for the moment that you do not have to withdraw, and I will verify that and report back.
Excuse me, it was my understanding that students in the virtual academy got a Wissahickon High School diploma. So I don't know that they were actually withdrawn. It's something that
I agree, Ron. I really need to look at it. We'll get the facts. We'll get the facts on that. Our goal is to make it as seamless as possible, and that withdrawing doesn't seem seamless to me, but I will verify.
Jim, I have a question. If for the virtual academy, this is for the people that are electing to do 100% virtual at the beginning of the year?
Correct.
Okay, what happens if we are mandated to do 100% virtual?
Okay, so.
Is that going to be different than this?
Correct.
Okay.
What will happen is if we're forced to close, if the governor closes all the schools again, then we will have, these students will stay where they are and keep doing this. Everybody else will stay with their teachers that they have for the in-person part, and all the teachers will convert to virtual. And we'll learn from our spring experience, have many more synchronous opportunities, have much more rigor, much more accountability if we have to. And we're going to have that in these as well, but it's kind of hard to go back and forth into either one of these midstream in the middle of a semester.
Jim, I may ask a question?
Sure.
If choosing the virtual option puts you in there for an entire semester, regardless of whether the school district shuts down or not, and if the school shuts down, the kids in the school program will stay with the teachers, why aren't we simply adding webcams, Zoom options, WebEx options into each classroom to prepare for this in case it happens? That way, all of our kids remain Wissahickon kids in the Wissahickon schools with their peers, with their teachers. And although we hope for the best, we have to prepare for any scenario. If we have to go completely virtual, we've now put the test into practice because the teachers have already been doing it with kids who might choose to do it by WebEx, Zoom, or some other web camera. Why aren't we just starting this from get-go? And that way it's in place, ready to go. And if we have to change, everybody stays the same anyway. It would seem by going to a virtual academy, you are putting those kids at a disadvantage and saying, you're sort of out, but if you decide to deal with whatever risk there is of going to school, you get the benefit of staying with your teachers in your classes if we shut down again. Can we simply, if we're going to have a virtual academy, fine, but can we simply add the cameras now and start it that way? I think it would lessen probably the amount of kids in classes to begin with, which would certainly be, I think, a positive for parents and for teachers, and it'll also get us ready if we need it.
I know there was discussion about that, and I'm gonna ask Gary and or Jeff to help us with this. Can either of you gentlemen shed some light on the camera topic, please?
Yeah, so we did explore the potential of a camera and a speaker system in the classroom. We initially thought of doing it in select classrooms because the capacity of the district to actually equip all the classrooms with this feature in time for the start of school, in our discussion with vendors, seemed relatively unlikely. The earliest they could tell us that they could actually accommodate us could be as early as October or even November at the current rate of things. So it seemed to be an impossible opportunity for us to begin the school year equipped, ready to offer that feature to the students. That really was the challenge. We did look at it because it's, of course, one of the options that's out there, and it does have some tremendous value and benefit. I would agree with you, but the feasibility of getting it in place and actually having it ready to operate on day one or even the first month of school is unlikely at this point.
But if the kids have computers anyway with cameras, as does the teacher, why can't they simply, just like we do for every board meeting, businesses do for every meeting where they never have an in-person meeting of 12 or 15 or 20 people, why can't we have that option by opening up a laptop and turning on the camera? We can do, I know we can do it safely because all companies are doing it, and other people other organizations are doing it safely. Instead of installing a particular type of camera system, until that's done, if that's the way we choose to do it, why can't we simply turn on a Zoom or WebEx meeting and have it go? I don't understand why that would be difficult at all. It would seem to me the easiest way.
I agree with Marshall.
And keep our kids within the
Could
school
have the
district.
kids just turn their cell phones on their teachers, or the school district could buy time on the teacher's cell phone, and then just buy a bracket in the back of the room or a tripod and work it that way.
I mean, believe it or not, our kids know how to use this technology better than we do. And I would think within a minute, they could be online watching their courses with their teachers and their peers with the ability to not only watch it, but interact with everybody, as opposed to being in a program where they don't feel like they're part of the school district. And to me, that's counterintuitive with what we're trying to do. If we're trying to make people safe, which I think is an overriding principle here, well, if we're going to put kids in school, that increases risk. But if you're going to keep kids at home, if they're going to be allowed to stay home, they shouldn't be penalized for doing so. And I don't know that you're going to convince me that that's not a viable option day one, regardless. And I know that there are factors to be considered in terms of whether it's a particular program or camera system, but I don't see why we can't, at least at the beginning till the program is ready to go some other way, get these kids online immediately. They could do it now and we can do it.
And also with the high school, if we're already talking about doing a hybrid where some are in one day and some are in another day, the option of being able to do some kids are in class one day and some kids are in class another day, but everybody is learning the same thing every day by doing it through Zoom. I would think that would make a difference too. We don't have to have all the kids in the school at the same time, so we can do the social distancing part of it, but every kid that's in that class can participate every day with live teaching.
One of the things I'd like to suggest here, I think we can look at the camera issue a little more. I don't think we take the virtual academy entirely off the table. I do think people will like that as a standalone program.
Yeah, I don't think we take that off the table either.
So we can look at possibly adding the other option. I can
Jim,
tell
just
before we go on, I can
Excuse me,
confirm
there is
students
one
do
thing
not
to
have to disenroll when they go to the virtual academy. I just got that confirmed. So they do not disenroll. They stay in. They just have a little different code. So that's helpful. But I like the camera at least to explore and see what hurdles there may or may not be.
Yeah, and Jim,
There is
so
one
you
thing
know.
to consider, excuse me, Marshall, whether we have enough bandwidth for this many broadcasts to go on at the same time. We're talking about every classroom in the high school broadcasting every day. And I think this may drive our tech staff somewhat to distraction.
We'll check. But that's an excellent point. We'll check on that. We'll check on if there's any privacy or union concerns, and we will report back. And we'll do that on a priority basis.
And Jim, just to make clear, I'm not advocating for the removal of the virtual academy option. There are always people who may want that.
Understood.
I just think there is another option equally or better potentially implemented for our kids to remain part of our district and active members of the district.
Yeah, understood. Okay.
Thank you.
This is Effie. I have a quick question. For the virtual academy, you had in your previous slide indicated that you could go, you could switch back and forth between, virtual, hybrid, and or in person, based on your grade level. How in sync, especially in the 7 to 12 bracket, is the virtual academy with the 7 to 12 program that's happening live? So will I be able, if I'm student X and I was in semester 1 in algebra, at the end of that semester, if I'm going to an in-live situation, will I be at the right point or, following along or tracking along as my peers who are in the in-live program?
Very good question. The answer is it's not in perfect sync. They're both standards based, so eventually it gets in sync.
Okay.
Maybe there might be some sequencing issues. Gary, do you have some insights on that?
Yeah, so when we first began with the Virtual Academy last school year, we did sort of line up our core academic programs, our math, our ELA, science, social studies, to be aligned fairly closely. So those courses are reasonably close. They are not identical. They are standards based from Pennsylvania, but the sequence is not always exact. So there could be a little bit of an out of sync piece, but nothing so dramatic that it would cause difficulty if a child was going to enter into Wissahickon High School courses in the middle of the year.
Perfect. Quick follow on to that. And I forgot. But to Marshall's comment, I know we threw around Zoom and WebEx a lot, but I know that the kids have MS Teams on their laptops. I use MS Teams at work, and I do think that is a good platform. You could do lots of stuff on that. So I think we should look at all technology options. I know Zoom is kind of a default that we all go to.
Yeah, I agree. And the bandwidth, technology is an issue, and we'll definitely consider that strongly and report back no later than Monday, which is when our next meeting is actually.
I remember my question. For the
Okay.
7 to 12 Wissahickon Virtual Academy, how are encores handled? Or are there no encores in this track?
No, the Virtual Academy does offer the academic courses. It offers health and PE because it's a requirement of the state of Pennsylvania to be done. And they have a range of courses in the field of health and physical education. And then they, of course, have electives. So students would be taking their core classes. They'd be taking a health and PE, and then they would take electives as well. So it would be a full complement of courses.
Thank you.
All right. So there was allusion earlier to the
Hey,
survey
Jim.
results.
Jim, sorry, can you flip back one slide?
I think so. Yep.
So at the bottom row there, special ed accommodations and supports. I guess, can you talk a little bit about how in either side, K through 6 or 7 to 12, we or the district will be accommodating students with IEPs, obviously, as well as the GIEPs.
Yes, so for all students, Joe, all students K-12 who receive special education services, whether that's IEP, GIEP, any of the related services, the students would still be monitored and still be with their IEP. They would still have their case manager. They would still have their annual IEP meeting. If there was a need to meet again at parent request or school request, to adjust or modify, adapt any of the programming approaches with specially designed instruction, all of that would still take place as though the child was present in the brick and mortar. That all has to be there. Our special education team would remain the support and work with families and students to support them and monitor them as they're going through the programs. Just like they were if they were in school. So those special education accommodations and all required meetings take place, and the case manager still remains in place for the family.
And Gary, in a similar fashion, what about English language learners and how we're going to manage or handle delivery of?
Same thing. So whether a child's getting speech and language services, whether they're getting ESL services, whether they're getting reading intervention, all these services continue to run, and they will continue to run in the case of the K-6 program. They would run just like they ran in the school day, except in a virtual way with the teacher who's operating virtually. So the child would get a service and would be probably getting that virtually from the provider.
And probably synchronous, I would assume too, right?
It's synchronous, yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so to the survey results. We administered an initial survey in June, almost exclusively to gather feedback about the spring virtual teaching and learning. There was one question at the end: which of the models, very vaguely described, would you choose if you had to in the end of June, which was, or middle of June, I guess it was, even beginning. And those are the composite results. I'm going to put PDFs of both the June survey and the July survey up on the website, which has many more details. I didn't want to go into all here, but you can see that there was interest in all three, not quite as much for virtual at the moment, at that time. What happens is, as the national response to COVID and whether or not we're doing a good job gets sort of publicized, people's mindsets change, which I understand. The July survey, which we just administered, again, we didn't ask about the hybrid because we just didn't have it in place yet. But in any event, about the same percentage by all 6 schools, about a quarter would have preferred virtual, and 75%, 100% in person. Now that could certainly change at the 6 to 12 level now that we're doing hybrid. So we'll get those out, and we're going to also, there's where we didn't include it, which was a flaw, but things are just moving too fast. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it. I just want to point something about surveys, though, is that they inform decisions and solutions. They don't really determine them. And I think that's an important expectation thing, because what happens is, up here, then it'll be like, well, we have to have this, we have to have that. Surveys help us get a sense of where people are and where their mindsets are. And it's helpful now, especially, it's helpful always, but now, especially since things are changing so fast. But as I said, I'm not so sure that June survey has much validity now, since so much has changed since then. The July one does more. And we're moving forward. What we do know is that one of the important takeaways from this is that there is substantial interest in the virtual option for whatever reason. And there's no way of knowing for sure, but this was a good helpful insight from these. So again, we'll make sure that all the questions, the ones that have an open-ended response, those are a lot of the ones for the spring. I don't know that we'll put all the open-ended responses up there, but we'll put some of the quantitative ones up, so if people are interested. But again, they get kind of stale pretty fast. So I want to share with you some major issues, essential questions, and the first one being perhaps everybody's favorite topic, face coverings. As a philosophical sharing out, the district leadership team believes in the efficacy of face coverings very strongly. I know that not everyone in the community agrees with that, but I just decided I would come out and say that. We believe it's an essential element of the overall strategy. Now, face coverings, by the way, can be masks. They can also be face shields. It can also be the gaiters that can pulled up to function like a mask. They can also be the baseball hats that have like a little face shield coming off of them, so it's comfortable. Basically, the way to attach the face shield to your head. So all of those are okay. Governor Wolf's recent order is very restrictive. Everybody knows that. Very few exceptions exist to this. And if you have a medical condition, okay, that's accepted. And maybe if you have some sort of something else, but for the most part, every human over the age of 2 is wearing face coverings. And it's in place, quote, until further notice, which is one of the things that started throwing us for a loop, because we just didn't know how to deal with that if it was going to be around for a long time. Our district plan is to comply with the governor's order for however long it is in place. I don't know why I felt compelled to say that. It was kind of obvious to me, but I just decided to say it. If and when it is rescinded, our approach will change slightly to require them whenever practical. Because frankly, I feel like a 6-year-old probably needs a 20-second break for every now and then. And we'll just figure out ways to do that. That doesn't mean 20-minute break, but I would recommend we adopt a slightly more practical approach, still requiring, and they will be required on buses at all times, and we mentioned that previously. The only caveat there is the driver, when driving, the bus is moving, and perhaps not, the person doesn't feel as that's in safety's interest to have it when he's driving or she's driving, then okay. Otherwise, everybody in the bus will have a face covering. So that's the update on that. Somewhat controversial for reasons I don't know, maybe political topic. I don't want to spend too much time on it other than to say, hey, we're requiring it.
Jim,
Yeah.
Jim, can I just insert something when we're talking about the
Sure.
face coverings? I know somebody had one of the questions that were read were asking if the school could order face coverings. And I just wanted to put out there, I don't know if people saw that there is a school store right now that is offering face coverings for sale. They're the gaiters and the masks. They are, I believe, being offered at a very low price. I don't know that the school is making any money off of them. They're just trying to get them out there for the parents. So I just wanted to make people aware that the school store is offering face coverings for sale.
That's correct. Thank you for that. And also we will have spare, talk about this later, but we will have spare face masks available on buses and at schools in case somebody forgets. So.
Jim, if I may, this is Jeff Sultanic, just briefly. There's two things that I need to say in addition to the face mask issue. First of all, from both your own personal perspective and Dr. Abamont's perspective, that you are absolutely required as commissioned officers of the state to implement the orders of the Department of Education, or your commissions will be lost in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So you have no choice but to enforce the order of Governor Wolf. Secondly, if we as a district elected not to follow that order, and there are some people, maybe not on the board, but maybe in the community who do not believe we should follow the order, we run the risk that the state could even stop state funding to the district under that circumstance. So as long as that order is in place, we have no discretion in terms of the implementation of that order.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Busing is a tricky one because it's basically a moving, mobile, confined space. We considered going from 2 bus tiers, which is, we have that now. Secondary all comes in together, and then there's a second tier for elementaries. Each one of them has their own bus. To 4. Splitting up the elementary, basically cutting the number of kids in every bus in half. Middle school would be separate from the high school, and then we'd have separate secondary runs. 4 tiers would be awesome for distancing, but, and here's the caveat, it would have required middle school to start 20 minutes earlier than it does now. And we did some pulse taking, and that really wasn't a popular option at all. 2 K to 5 schools will get out later, and the price tag would be over $500,000.
Jim, I have one question on that.
Sure.
If we are doing hybrid for high school and middle school, where it's half the people, wouldn't we only need 1 tier for that run? Wouldn't we just need to do the same run since it's half the students anyway?
Yeah, so exactly. That's one of the reasons why at the end of the slide, we're going to not recommend this, but because we're sort of achieving it anyway. And there's another reason, so I'll get to that. But yes, you're absolutely right. So the price tag is costly for, I'm not so sure how much benefit, but here's another thing. We alluded to this at the last meeting. Society in general is going to have a real problem on its hands with bus driver supply. And we can't know for sure right now. We're trying to get that nailed down, but this could be a real problem. So one of the other cons of this would be, it would just exacerbate that shortage because we need some more drivers to do these other runs. The July survey, although the question flow was confusing, and I think that was very good feedback, and we apologize for the confusion, told us generally speaking, there's going to be some amount of ridership reduction. Really hard to say exactly what, and we didn't make anyone commit. So again, that's going to be really just a broad brush. But that survey did indicate that whatever the accommodation, and again, the flow was crazy, but there may just be many fewer families comfortable putting their child on the bus, even with these precautions. So we're recommending we keep it as is at 2 tiers. Tracy's point about the hybrid at 6 to 12 is going to help basically 50% automatically there every day. And we have these precautions in place, 100% face coverings all times, spread out, no 3 to a seat. By the way, Bucks County Department of Health, to go back to an earlier point, published their recommendations, and they don't have any problem with 3 people to a seat, shoulder to shoulder. Okay, we're not doing that. This is an example of on the continuum, we're going to be a little bit better than that. We hope we're going to have spread it out much more. No 3 to a seat. Keep the windows open. That's a known help as long as it's not too crazy out. Disinfect frequently. That will help. So we have these precautions in place that will help with the busing, but we know it's not perfect, and we know there will be hesitation about the busing. So what does that mean?
Hey, Jim.
With hesitation about busing comes car line expansion. We know that. And we're going to have to just deal with that. And I don't have the details of that now, but I can tell you that we know it's going to be an increase in the car line.
Hey, Jim.
Yes.
Regarding buses, you have the phrase no 3 to a seat.
Mhm.
Does that mean that you can have 2 in a seat? And when you have 2 students in a seat, isn't that, I don't know what the dimensions are, but that seems pretty close together.
It could be if it's a narrow seat, maybe we'd only have one way around this is siblings can sit obviously next to each other. So that could be, I suppose, 3. We have some families with 3 going to the same school. So, okay.
No. I'm not advocating 3 to a seat. I think we
No, I
should
know.
definitely not have 3 to a seat. But I'm saying, are we still going to allow 2 to a seat even?
We probably approach it like if we have to, we will, but approach it like the airlines, like they're selling middle seats now, but no one really wants to be in a middle seat. No one ever wants to be in a middle seat, but especially now. So,
Jim, the issue is that currently we have over 60 children in a bus. So if you have 24 benches in a bus in general, you're going to end up with at least 2 to a seat in many areas to even get 50%. So that's going to happen. At the elementary level, frankly, we're going to have to do something in order to make it so that it's not going to be 3 to a seat. So that's the reality of it. And it backfills to what Jim started with, which is even if I was able to acquire 10 buses, I don't think I'm going to be able to acquire 10 bus drivers. So that's not going to be something we're going to be able to fix.
And not only that, but once a bus driver gets sick, there's not going to be a huge backfill of bus drivers waiting in line to take over those spots. So even if we could manage the 10, if one of them were to get sick, now we are down 1, at
exactly
least.
right. It's going to be tricky. But so that's why it's up there as a major issue, central question. But we're recommending keep it at 2 tiers at this point with these expanded precautions and just see.
Has there been any thought for the elementary schools to have maybe 2 different start times for parent drop-offs?
We could do things like that. The problem is it's going to be supervision on the other end. We can get around that. We can't use large spaces with all kids in them at once for supervision. So we're going to have to crack that nut in creative ways. But yes, that's a possibility.
Jim, last
Along
year we
those same
had
lines-
2 vendors that were competing for our contract for busing. Obviously, we chose one. Is there an option to go to the other vendor to either split those services or to actually add them for additional bus support?
Wait, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, so say one bus run would answer it. I probably have a few answers or people that I can call. If the answer is, could we add 10 runs, and likely even more than that was what would really be needed, I think that would be very, very difficult, but I could certainly make those calls and then present the numbers to the board. But again, Dr. Crisfield noted that the incremental cost of just doing the 4-tier was about $500,000. I suspect if we start adding bus runs, you're looking at $500,000 pretty quickly as well. If we added, even 1 or 2 at the elementary level per school.
Okay.
What if we were to do 1 additional tier for elementary level? you're figuring 250. Would
Yep.
we be able to get that?
Yep, we could do it, but it would be, the general cost would be about 250,000, and then you'd still have the same issues, which are, Dr. Chrisfield mentioned the busing on the driver's side. And one of the things that we are worried about is that sometimes the bus drivers have two jobs. This is a
Right.
job, and then it leads to a second job. And if that extra 45 minutes or whatever it took at the second elementary tier, both in the morning and the afternoon, it's possible that some of our bus drivers would drop out.
And if I may add to that, I think there's a substantial likelihood that if this is the case in Wissahickon, this will be in the case in many other surrounding school districts, and there won't be enough bandwidth to do the kinds of busing that we may want to have, even irrespective of cost.
Have we considered running students in a morning shift and an afternoon shift with split things up that way, which would maybe not require more bus drivers if we just had an additional run in the middle of the day coming and going. Has that been considered at all?
I think you're talking split sessions.
Correct.
Yeah, that was initially, but it goes back to the same reservations about hybrids in general, which is the younger kids would be home for half the day.
Right.
That half of the day would be something asynchronous, which isn't great for them. And there would be additional runs. There'd be a whole nother tier of runs midday.
Right.
So then we go into the same problem that we just spoke of possible shortages and anticipated staffing issues.
It would reduce density of students on the bus and in the building,
It certainly would.
but you're right.
Yeah. Okay. All right, I want to go to a list, and these are in no particular order, just other details that I can share out in response to many questions that we've been getting and some other matters. First, special education. Gary alluded to our approach to special education in general, which is to say our own case managers will still be involved every step of the way. However, special education, individual situations are so unique sometimes that any either situations or conflicts or something will be resolved and communicated in time for families to make that decision on July 31st. Okay, so I don't want to go into details now because it just kind of depends on the specific needs and the IEPs and things, but that's our commitment, that people will have enough information to make that decision by the 31st. A really awesome topic that made us send something out and then send a correction was that there's a new approach to travel where if people travel to one of a certain number of states, then they need to quarantine when they get back. And as you know, we initially included Delaware on that list, but that was a mistake because that's Philadelphia's list. And so we're not going to follow Philadelphia's, we're going to follow Pennsylvania's. But there is a very real need to quarantine after travel. If your family member travels, no. You know, like if Johnny's dad goes or mom goes to Tennessee, no, Johnny's not have to quarantine. Johnny will have to quarantine if Johnny's mom or dad comes back and starts having symptoms, okay, because that's a problem. But it's not like a second degree of quarantining required. But if Johnny goes out of the state to Tennessee, yeah, Johnny has to quarantine for 14 days. In general, quarantining. Now, this is one of the areas that is actually still a little bit in limbo. I have some details to share, but I can tell you that the Montgomery County Department of Health hasn't fully nailed this down just yet. So as soon as they do, we're going to share that out. Generally speaking, I read off my little cheat sheet here because it's pretty complicated fast. It's required, you or quarantining is required if you yourself have a positive test, if you have symptoms and go get a test, you get sent home, get a test, comes back positive, okay. If you've had close contact with somebody who's tested positive, now we get to the complications. What does close contact mean? Currently defined by Montgomery Department of Health as within 6 feet of the person who tests positive for 10 minutes or more. All right, that's some arbitrary numbers, but we got to draw a line somewhere. Now, how do we find out who was in close contact with Johnny over the course of the last day or two? Okay, that's still the contact tracing, which is incredibly elaborate, incredibly important. And Montgomery County Department of Health hasn't told us yet if they're doing it or we're doing it. Other counties have told their school districts that they're doing it, the County Department of Health. We are very much hoping Montgomery County comes to that same conclusion, but we haven't heard yet. If somebody has to go out on quarantine, it's counted as an excused absence, and without going into too much trouble or details right now, we're going to take a realistic approach to absences this year, because in general, we're in uncharted waters. We still have to count absences. We're taking attendance for sure. You still might get that annoying letter of 5 or 10 days or whatever. Those are all state requirements. But I would suggest we not get caught up in the technical classification of a student absence right now, because I think we all have bigger fish to fry.
Yeah,
So if you have to stay home because you don't feel well, or you have to quarantine, that's that. And then this last piece is really important. When Johnny has to stay home, our intention is to get them into the virtual option for 10 days, basically 10 school days.
Excuse me,
Sure.
Jim, there used to be a code for absences for quarantine. I haven't seen it recently, but there used to be one.
There may be, in which case we'll use it. We're just going to do what we have to do for coding and counting, but we're not going to drive families crazy worrying about sending Johnny in with 3 Advils because can't be absent one more time. Otherwise, it'll be a felony crime. Okay, we're not doing that. And we are going to accomplish instruction at home with our various virtual options temporarily. 14 days is essentially like probably 10 school days or so. Instruction will continue. And the trick here is that normally if somebody's home sick, we have instruction, some things that get sent home from the teacher, and it's usually, depending on the age of the student, hey, just read a really good book if you feel up to it. We hope to see you soon. Okay, well, the difference here is that these kids will quarantine, they feel perfectly fine. It's a very strange environment to be in, so they can be expected to do a normal day's worth of work. So we're going to get that to them through one of our virtual options.
Jim.
Yes.
Why would that then be counted as an absence? I know you're saying not to get caught up in the details being called an absence or not. Why would it be called an absence if the student is still expected to do normal work while they're home?
You might have put your finger on a way around it, in the sense that if we somehow count their attendance in the virtual option as like attending that day, maybe it's not an absence. You bring a very good point. If the student is actually the one positive, and so it's rather than in quarantine, but can't really do work, that might have to be a day out sick. But I like that thought of counting as a virtual day if they're perfectly healthy and doing all the work. I think that's a really good point.
And has the state said whether they're going to be less stringent on these types of things for the coming school year?
Stringent in terms of what?
As far as absences and, after 10 absences, you get your letter home and.
Yeah, so probably not. Those are probably things in code that were specially waived in the spring due to crisis. So probably going to have to go back to those days. Mm-hmm. But as I said, without saying it officially, we're going to be sending these letters with a little grain of salt in there. I don't want to say any more. Jeff Sultanic's on this call, and I don't want to get myself in trouble, but that's what we're going to be doing here in Wissahickon. Nursing matters. This is
I'm
another.
sorry, Jim. Can we go back to the previous slide?
We
This is
can.
Effie. So with your first sub-bullet under quarantining, you know, we're counting 14 days of the positive test or the close contact or when we come back from travel. And then do we need to have a retest of a negative to come back to school? And how is all that going to be governed?
Very, very good questions. What we have done is we have compiled a chart with those questions and the various reasons why you would be out, which symptoms, re-entry things. I don't want to go into right now, but I can tell you this chart will be shared with everyone before the 31st. So that everyone can see how the Department of Health is telling us to handle quarantine matters. We're not going to make a whole lot of, probably none of these decisions ourselves, because while we have some people very, very well versed in matters regarding, you know, nursing and medical situations, we have district physician. These are the sorts of things that really need to be at the state or maybe county level. So we'll get this chart together and we will share it out with everyone as soon as it's ready.
If I may, I just want to caution anybody that the Department of Health may change its protocols on handling these items as time goes on during the year. So even if we develop one that's based upon best available knowledge right now, I would not count on it remaining the case. Generally, if somebody tests COVID-19 positive right now, the protocol of the Montgomery County Department of Health is 2 successive negative tests within 24 hours. And that goes for employees and will also go for students. And if you are exposed, it's a different methodology. So I would not, I know people are hungry for answers, but on these kinds of issues, I would not spend a lot of time on those issues because it's going to be based upon the best available information at the time. And it'll be a function of what testing is available and what contact tracing is available at that time.
I agree with that. Thank you, Jeff. That's a really good point. And I was going to say was this chart we'll put in. I think it's a good to note that could change and put some disclaimers in there. But this is an area where many of the questions have come in, and people are very interested in how we're doing this because that might, I'm projecting, that might influence their decision whether to choose virtual or not. And I think that makes perfect sense to me. So I know that people need these answers. And what we'll do is we'll take a snapshot, as Jeff points out, at the most latest and greatest guidance, and we will share it out so that people have that information.
And I want to also, people are concerned. I do want to emphasize that the Montgomery County Department of Health is one of the most activist departments of health in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And they have taken probably some of the most safest protocols and implemented them in the county. There are a number of counties in Pennsylvania that do not have counties departments of health and are left up to their own devices to determine how to handle some of these things or rely upon the State Department of Health, which is spread too thin. So we're fortunate in Montgomery County that we'll have a much more vigilant safety organization in place than the rest of the state.
I had a question going back to the last bullet in the quarantine section. So if you are a student that is required to quarantine at home for 14 days, and they are going to get assignments just to try to keep up because they are otherwise, not symptomatic and can do work, how is that instruction going to be delivered? Is it just assignments from the classroom teacher being sent home? Is it content from the virtual program? I think I might have missed that.
Yeah. Gary, you want to take that?
Sure. So at the K to 6 level, remember we'll have teachers teaching virtually to students at grade 5, for example, or grade 6. If a student is in the brick and mortar school and the child needs to be quarantined for 14 days, 10 school days, or 3 weeks, whatever it happens to be, that youngster would be assigned to the teacher who's teaching virtually for the period of time that they are home. And they will experience a typical daily day of school at home with synchronous teaching, where they will start the day at 8:30, quarter to 9 in the morning. They will have their typical flow of classes during the day, live with the teacher introducing the lessons, conducting class, and all those pieces. The teacher who's teaching virtually will be following the curriculum of the teacher of the district, and keeping pace along with the teachers who are teaching in the in-person classroom settings. So that's how that'll be handled at the elementary level. At the secondary level, they would be assigned to we would enroll them for that period of time, as little as 2 weeks, into the virtual academy. And the classroom teacher would identify the particular skills, concepts being discussed in that 2-week period, and the lessons would be assigned to that student asynchronously for them to work on to keep pace with what's happening in the classroom. Now, I will say that with the hybrid discussion that sort of emerged that we're sharing this evening, we're looking at that option in other ways, possibly based on the fact that students would be in one day, out the next day, and is there some way to keep that youngster who's quarantined in sync with the classroom that they're actually assigned to in the building. We're looking at that as an option, but our original thought was to put them on the academy with the asynchronous plan that's customized to the instruction they're currently getting in the class. The main thing here to point out is that we're trying to keep these students up to speed with instruction, not just sending home work to be done over a 2-week period. That's the goal.
So if we are looking at what Marshall suggested and having, some phone camera or something like that, so that if we're doing a hybrid for 7 through 12, and each kid is actually getting classroom learning every day instead of every other day or however else the hybrid would be, then these kids that are having the 14-day quarantine would just be doing 14 straight days of the hybrid over the camera, however, if we're able to do that, correct?
Yeah,
they wouldn't have to do the virtual academy because they would be just doing the virtual that would be set up at the high school for the hybrid.
That's correct. So we could look at that as an alternative to what we just discussed, definitely.
Okay.
Okay to move on? Okay. So as I mentioned, nursing matters are very, very important. We've got an awesome team of nurses helping us on the task force. They put a ton of thought into specifically at each school where the isolation room could be. That's a place where a student would be kept apart from others until somebody comes to pick them up. It's not easy. It's building specific, so I'm not going to go over each specific one. The nurses, by the way, don't all of a sudden magically have their normal duties go away once they have to deal with all these new COVID-19 duties. So they're being very diligent about plans for that. This is an important topic. I think it came up a couple of questions. Our approach will be to have temperatures checked at home. We are not recommending that we check temperatures either before getting on the bus, don't see how that's practical, or coming into the building. While technology exists, it's just not practical, and we're asking that staff and families check the temperatures at home before leaving for school. I think a question may have pointed out too, please don't slip an Advil or two so that everything's okay for a couple hours. I know that no one ever does that, but just hypothetically, if anyone ever did that, we really don't need them to do that now because this is really important stuff.
Jim, once we do, if there's someone that goes to the isolation rooms, how's that being, are we having 2 nurses at each school?
If there's going to need to be elements of supervision, doesn't perhaps have to be a nurse. And as I know you know real well, we're going to run into shortages there too. There will have to be supervision of everyone at all times, of course, and whether that's accomplished with a nurse or another adult is yet, it's probably going to be building specific given different layouts.
Have we thought of, instead of maybe implementing some LPNs instead of RNs for just like extra help for something like this?
I will ask.
Like I would, I would not want it to be like just an LPN at the school,
Yeah.
but in addition, for, if someone's in the isolation room, then maybe the LPN could be in the isolation room while the RN is in the regular nurse's office. I don't know, just a thought.
It might well be considered. I think it's a good idea. A good point. I mean, we should check into it anyway. Staffing matters.
Jim, I'm sorry, going back to the temperature checks.
Okay.
I recognize you're saying temperature checks at home, and we can recommend that and ask people to do that. But obviously we can't control that. What's the reason for not just doing temperature checks ourselves at the front door of the schools as kids come in? I guess like what's the argument for not doing that at all?
It's done. Some districts are trying it. We try to envision what that would look like practically every day. It would look like students lining up, which all of a sudden becomes a distancing issue. There are a lot of, there could be some false negatives, which then defeats the whole purpose anyway. And if a student is found to be positive, it would be important information, but it could be due to something else. It could be that they'll feel fine soon. We want to know if they have a temperature, but it just didn't seem practical to do it on premise versus before they leave home.
If I may, Joe, having heard a lot of districts debate this particular issue as well as private sector companies, temperature testing is not considered to be the most accurate means of COVID-19 diagnosis. And secondly, in order for it to be effective, temperature checking needs to be probably taken at the bus transportation level, because that may be where the possibility of transmission may be greater, arguably, than at the school. And the transportation logistics would be enormous, no less. Slow down the entire transportation system. And what do you do if a child's at a bus stop and tests positive? Are you going to leave the child at the bus stop? There are a lot of logistics associated with temperature scanning. And I think most districts, after weighing the pluses versus the minuses, felt that the benefit of safety that's achieved from that is minimal and would cause a lot of congregating at the entry of buildings and at buses, which will make social distancing less possible also, and may actually contribute to the transmission of the disease. So a lot of districts aren't going to be engaging in temperature testing.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question. Am I on here?
Yep, you are.
Okay, this is a question for Gary. So we're expecting that whoever is teaching online, say first graders or second graders, that the teacher in the classroom and the online teachers are going to be in sync with one another and covering the same material, so that if somebody has to leave the regular classroom, a student, and then go in quarantine, that they just go online. And
Yes. Yes, so we're expecting that the teachers will maintain pace with the pacing charts in the curriculum. And they may not be exactly to the day, but they'll be teaching long division at the same time of the year. They will be teaching the same units in wonders. Those they'll be matched up and they'll be maintaining pacing, and they'll be in communication with the teachers at the school where they're taking the kids.
Can the child who's in quarantine, why couldn't they watch the teacher teach from home, from their computer?
If we use that technology, we could do that. If we use the technology, we could do that. We hadn't been exploring that as a realistic option at this point, and that's why we didn't pursue that further. One of the things we do know is we feel as though the kids at the elementary level do need to be with the teacher and interacting and part of the experience of the class. So we felt that the virtual teacher who's working with a community of children would be able to integrate the child right in and actually be interactive in that computer as well. The other options possible, and that's something we're gonna have to look at over the course of this next few days to see whether we do see that as realistic and as a good idea for elementary in particular.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mary, if I could follow up on that, who then is assessing the student? Is it going to be the actual teacher that's in the classroom, or is it going to be the virtual teacher, some combination?
When the student goes into quarantine, the work that they complete while in the quarantine time period would be evaluated by the teacher, the teacher who's teaching virtually. And that teacher would then share those results, that work performance with the classroom teacher upon return.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So as I mentioned, these are in no particular order because staffing matters are as a topic is a really hot one. There are some very specific HR provisions from state and federal levels, and I'm not convinced that they've fully played out everywhere yet. And I know that Jeff will back me up on that. Staff leadership has been involved to date with these plans. But one of the tricks is tonight is the first time, I mean, I shared this presentation with staff members just prior to the meeting, but so today is the first time that many staff members will have seen what it looks like. So at the same time that parents are hungry for information and details, so are staff members. And because they may have a situation at home, they might have a medical condition, or they might live with somebody who's particularly compromised. So they are eager to share that with us, and they have been to some degree a little bit already. And Kathy Rossi and her team stands ready to respond as best we can. But there are limitations. There are limitations written into these state and federal, I guess you would call them laws, code, that are different from what was in place in the spring. Spring had some emergency provisions just to make sure everybody kept getting paid and we didn't have an entire collapse. Now things are different. So staff members will digest what it's going to look like, ask questions of their principals and of Kathy, Director of Personnel. We'll confer one-on-one basis, keep everything private, of course, protect their privacy rights, and then do the best we can to meet everyone's needs. But we can't, the problem is we're just not going to be able to promise anybody anything specifically. We just can't. So I'm gonna inject a pregnant pause right about now, because I know Ronnie's getting ready to hit the space button to unmute. So anybody else?
Jim, yeah, I had a question. We did a survey of the teachers. What was their response? Are they interested in coming back or more interested in doing virtual?
I'm gonna have to dig that out. I mean, it's what happens is we're gonna have them share individualized concerns with us. Because let's just say, for example, we ask the question and 30% of the people say, well, I'd rather be out virtual. I don't want to come back to school. Okay, we can't do anything with information. We can't accommodate that number, and that's not going to inform our decision making. But if Mrs. Smith comes to us and explains her medical condition, or that she lives in a 3-generation household or whatever, oh, okay. She's on a list of people we see if we can make it work. We might not be able to, though.
The teachers that may have reasons to stay home may be forced to come in and teach.
Yeah, Kath, I don't know if you can share, Kath or Jeff, share some, I mean, in real short order, how that works in the HR world.
Yeah, and Jeff, please feel free to jump in. There are specific situations where, and we have presented this information to our staff under the FFCRA leave of absence rules that will allow us to provide our staff with some ability to stay out if they have medical conditions, if they are advised to stay home for some reason, if they're caring for someone else who has COVID or any other issues. And again, we're going to follow the federal law. And I have spoken to probably about 10 teachers already who have indicated issues. We have been very specific, and I've told every teacher who's contacted me, you're not going to lose your job because you can't teach during COVID-19 crisis. However, there will be limitations to what the district can do as far as full year leaves go. But also, we will be trying to also provide for the virtual options for those teachers that have the most serious needs.
If I may supplement that.
Please.
First of all, a generalized concern of a faculty member about coming back to school and remaining safe is something that we can fully appreciate, but certainly if we want to deliver an educational program for our students, we will not be able to regularly accommodate because we won't have enough of a corpus of professional staff to come back and teach students if people just express generalized anxiety. We have to, and we will, and we understand that certain people will have their own particular disabilities. And under the law, we have to have an interactive discussion with them to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act to address whether or not we can make an accommodation. And actually, by going to a virtual program, we will have more options to accommodate an employee's issues by providing them an option to teach virtually to the extent their certification works and to the extent that we have a position available to them. So we will have more options than we would normally have to accommodate disabilities on the part of our faculty. But it's going to be a fine balance going into the next school year of encouraging enough staff members to come in to teach our students, to meet our intended goal to try to reinitiate school, and then at the same time honor individual disabilities. There have been a lot of studies that are done going beyond our survey, done by better survey takers than ourselves, that have concluded that there may be a large number of individuals who will be concerned about returning to work. But I think the approach that is being taken by the administration, as Jim started out in his presentation, was that the district is looking at all forms of guidance, trying to put together the best available safety techniques that are in place to assure the safety of our faculty and our students, subject to reasonable and practical limitations. And that's, I think, the guiding force on this issue. And we need to have enough teachers willing to come back to make this program work, because none of this works, whether it be virtual or live, if we don't have enough teachers teaching.
And Jeff, this question is for you, and maybe this is something, if it is better addressed in executive session, please let me know. But I mean, the attorney, wonders, like, what liability do we have as a district by requiring our teachers to work in these? if somebody would get sick, for example?
Very limited liability, if at all. First of all, school districts are protected under state law under the Political Subdivision Tort Claims Act, which means that under the concept of sovereign immunity, we can only be sued if the state allows people to be sued, and there's really no lawsuit for negligent maintaining of somebody on staff or putting somebody in an unsafe condition. Clearly, if somebody can prove, and that is very difficult to prove, that they got COVID-19 as the result of the district not implementing appropriate safety requirements, they have the avenue of workers' compensation under Pennsylvania law, as would be the case with any kind of workplace illness or injury. But unlike the private sector, we have very limited liability risk.
Thank you.
Okay. So that's a big wild card. Generally speaking, large gatherings like assemblies are out. That's just common, or I should say, that's just a generally accepted precaution against the spread. Athletics, we will continue to operate under the PIAA procedures and protocols for the time being. I have not heard of them changing in any fashion. We're gonna leave that one on the table for right now. Lunch, we alluded to this earlier, it's gonna look and feel different. And there's gonna be some building specific solutions. So here in a second, I'm going to address what to do with additional questions. And as you can see, we're gonna have a bunch at the end of this meeting. But then there's gonna be more in the coming days. This one is probably as building specific as any of them because they're different spaces, different size cafeterias, all that sort of thing. A question came up whether or not we have sufficient supplies in place, and the answer is many have been ordered or at least on order. Can't always deliver or can't always guarantee, but we do have the extra masks that came up. We're going to have cleaning wipes, we're going to have hand sanitizer. Every district in the planet is trying to get these same exact things. So Wade has to use his very best and most skilled methodologies to get these things. And if anyone can do it, he can. So we're stockpiling. We are ready with supplies at the greatest degree we can. Cleaning procedures. We do have the ability, without going into a whole lot of detail right now, we have the ability to increase the percentage of outside air that gets pumped into buildings through the HVAC system. We regularly pump in outside air. That's just a natural thing you do with HVAC in a big building like a school. You can adjust it to do more or less depending on, say, things like temperature. So more air is good. More outside air is good. Better circulation is good. We'll have windows open in cases where it can be done and it's not inappropriate, whatever. And we'll adjust the HVAC, but just everyone needs to understand that in the wintertime, with all the complaints about temperatures, is going to come more complaints about cold because that's more cold air being injected. That's just the way it works. And in warmer months, the opposite. We believe it's worth it because we know the values of air circulation in the entire fight against spreading this thing, but just wanted to throw a little caveat in there. There will be some temperature, I should say, more temperature concerns than perhaps normal. And I know there are some out there. We have daily evening disinfecting protocols in place. We have things to be done during the day, high touch surfaces, doorknobs and such. We stand ready for an urgent disinfecting if the nurse feels a need for something like maybe even like the isolation room or something. Personal items, generally speaking, should probably be removed from the equation. Like you're not gonna really sit on a, if you have like a sofa or something like a beanbag chair or something, maybe we save those for when things go back to normal. So here's the thing that the principals love about this presentation. I just know it. I feel their love right through the Zoom and onto this screen. What we need to do to be more efficient in answering people's questions, because I get it, tonight is not efficient, and I get it, there's frustration out there. We've hopefully answered some. You're going to have many, many more. Detailed things have to go to your building principal so you can have an efficient conversation or a quick email. We're getting too backed up and we can't get to specific questions at the central office level as much as I'd like to. I tried creating a Q&A for the first meeting. It took almost a whole day. That's not efficient use of our time right now. And so many of the questions about details will be building specific. So please direct specific questions to your building principal. Now they're going to know the answer some of the time and they're not going to know it others. Well, then they'll go dig it out. They'll ask me or Gary or Kathy or Wade or something, and then they'll respond. We want to get your questions answered, but it's becoming virtually impossible for me to respond to the inbox every day. I wake up in the morning, it's 100 emails, and for me to get through them, I don't want to be rude, but I also want you to get answers more quickly. So we're going to try this new approach moving forward between now and the start of school. Speaking of moving forward, a week from tonight is when the board officially approves the plan that gets submitted to the state. And that will fill out pages of charts that the state is having districts fill out. We're all required to submit them to the state. The state does not look at them, does not approve them, which is a strange arrangement, but whatever. So this is an important document, and as soon as it's ready, we'll share it out. It's going to capture everything we talked about tonight, any possible tweaks between now and next Monday. And as Jeff alluded, things are moving anyway. So our approach to quarantining might be changed by the Department of Health for us, in which case our health and safety plan quarantine section is stale before it even hits the ground. But in any event, we'll fill this thing out, and that will be a major approval item Monday night at the board meeting.
Jim.
Other items also. Monday night, this coming Monday, is not just this health and safety plan. There's some other.
Jim, on the previous slide, you'd referenced or recommended that parents send more additional specific questions to their building principal about school reopening or details related to school reopening.
Yes.
I know, like, there was a change a while back that if you go on the district's website and you went into the staff directory and you just search, let's say, on Lynn Blair,
right,
it would bring up Lynn's name, but it would not have any of her contact information in the staff directory. Like, that was some kind of change we made for security purposes.
Correct.
So where should parents go if they want to get the actual contact information of the principal of their school?
You're right. We don't print, or we don't share email addresses for the general public because of phishing and ransomware concerns. So if a parent doesn't know the
Dr. Crisfield, the principal emails are on the website. They're just not in the directory. They're on each school's title page.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. McGowan. That was very helpful.
Yep.
Okay, so if I go into the Wissahickon High School specific page, it'll give the contact information of the administrators in that building. So just for folks, maybe we could mention this in the staff directory page, because on the district staff directory page, we do not have specific contact information for principals or other school staff. So maybe some kind of, if a parent, for example, if I'm a kindergarten parent, I don't exactly know where to go. I go to the staff directory that's on our website and I type in, the Shady Grove principal's name. I won't be able to find their contact information. I might not know to go to the actual school page. So something that could point people in the right direction, I think, would be helpful.
Okay.
Well, it does have the actual, it has, for instance, at Bluebell Elementary, it has C. Lupo at wsdweb.org. So that's probably a specific address just for her. It's not a common address. Is that correct?
It's the accurate, yeah, we're treading a fine line between keeping our technology secure and enabling important communication. So the quick answer to your question there, Ron, is yes, and we'll get that publicized to the greatest extent possible. We don't want to publicize it to people who wish to do us harm either. So we'll figure that out in a way to get parents that information.
Right, because it's on the website now.
Okay.
Yeah, correct, Ron. My point was just that if you went to the main district website, there is a staff directory page, which is a staff directory for the entire school district. If you try to search someone's name through that staff directory, it'll give you the person's name and position, but it will not give you any contact information. The contact information is on the website. It's just not in the staff directory is my point. Then people might be confused by that. And so something that directs them to where they can actually get it, which it sounds like in the school specific web pages, it has that contact information for the administrators of that building.
Yeah, okay. So money's important. And then just as important, 11 days after that, we need families to commit to 100% virtual or not. So that's 18 days from tonight, where we have some more questions to answer. We got some things to figure out. And then we need to know, and this will be one of those things where we don't need to, we're going to just assume everyone is, or let me just put it this way. We're going to have families opt into the 100% virtual. That's just for practicality's sake. And some have already told us, and we're making note of that. And you know, the schools will keep a tally, but many are waiting to hear some details and do some more thinking and ask more questions. So that deadline date is 18 days away. Very important deadline.
Jim, I've heard some concerns from folks about the idea of making the commitment as of July 31st without feeling like they have enough information to make a well-informed decision or commitment.
Correct.
And what happens if, let's say, August 15th, I have a change of heart? You know, what accommodations or what allowances are going to make for people to essentially change their mind after July 31st? Or on the flip side, if after the second week of school, for whatever reason, I'm unsatisfied with the choice that I made for my child,
yeah,
and I want to switch, like what's the protocol?
Very, very limited ability to do that. The reason we need this deadline is we need to get our staffing in place. And every summer, this is a challenge anyway, especially at the elementary level. This one, it's going to be a 10x challenge. We can't have final decisions any later than this. We just need that. We just need to know so that we can figure out who's going to be the teacher for third grade virtual. To somebody's point, what if we have 40 third grade virtual? Then we need 2. Okay, that sort of thing. I can't wait, because then the teachers need to know where they're going to go too. Our ability to accommodate requests to change a decision after the semester starts is going to be incredibly limited. I know that's not an answer people want to hear either, but for the same reasons, if all of a sudden too many people decide they want to go virtual and we can't handle it, because then we just don't have the capacity to go in back and forth like that. We are going to try to do it with the students who are in quarantine, because that's a limited basis, 10 days or so. And of course, there'll be emergencies, you know, that we're not going to be like some zero tolerance for this. But generally speaking, we won't be able to accommodate change requests nearly as often as people would hope we can.
So Jim, just to recap, for elementary level, you have the choice of 100% in or 100% out for the first semester. Is that correct?
Correct. And then you'll have the choice again for the second semester.
Right. So For the secondary level, you have the choice of the hybrid, 100% hybrid, or 100% virtual.
Correct.
And we're still looking at the hybrid to see if we can do something where it's everyday learning, but you might be 2 days at home, 3 days at school, or vice versa, depending on the week. But we're looking to see if we can do the 100% everybody's doing the same lesson plan every day.
What you talking about, the camera technology?
Yes.
Yes, we're going to look into that. We need to confer with a number of different vectors, but we're going to do that as a priority basis the next few days.
So we will know that for the 7/20 meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Jim, am I correct that once you choose your option, you need to stay with that option until the end of December? Or is it for the marking period?
Semester. So it will be whatever
The second or third week in January.
Yeah.
Okay. Why would it not be per marking period? Isn't the second or third week of January midway through the second marking period?
Our schools, our secondary schools are on a quarterly base, which would work with the semester. Our elementaries are on a trimester base. So we'd be making a shift midway, but again, we would still be, whether the students are in the school or in the virtual option, they're still following the same program and would be assessed in the same areas and skills as they were moving through.
Okay. And what will be the circumstances under which we allow students to switch from one program to the other program?
That's classified, Amy. I don't know that enough people on this call have the clearance to discuss that. But the serious answer is only some very unique possible health situations, family situations. I mean, we all have things that we can't plan on that just happen to us. And so, as I say, I don't really want to be, like completely black and white on this, but on the other hand, it's gonna require, it can't be just because I don't like this. It's gonna have to be because my grandmother has to live with us now, but she just lost her house or something, or she has to come here or whatever. Okay, we're not gonna be cold like that. But if you don't like it, I mean, I'm sorry you don't like it. We'll work to help you try to work to get better the things you don't like, but that can't be a reason we would be able to accommodate.
And if there would be something like major that would happen with COVID between July 31st and August 31st within the state of Pennsylvania, would we allow people to, if numbers would spike or something, would we allow parents to reassess their decision at that point in time, or once you're?
That's a really good question. I mean, a lot of us are talking about, I think one of the questions came through, I think the word metric was used, like what metric going to use to close schools? And I would just reiterate that we wouldn't be doing that. Okay, the governor would, close schools or not, but in that scenario you're speaking of, if there's such a spike that people are going to get, have it be enough to local here in Pennsylvania to worry about, I would hope that we get some direction from Harrisburg on what to do. If it's just something that happens nationally, it's a development that somebody reads about and decides that they now have a different mindset than they did when they made the decision on July 31st, that's going to be hard to accommodate for the same reasons we can't accommodate wholesale changes. I'm not really finding the best words to use to describe the reasons why, but it's just, for not lack of a better thought, it's just a matter of practicality, frankly.
Okay. Understood.
Okay, so we have a couple other dates. We're aiming, once we get everybody's information, to finalize staff assignments. They have a right to know what they're going to do, so they can have 3 weeks to actually prepare if it's different than what they thought they were going to do. Like we do every year, this is mainly at the K-5 level, but we finalize student assignments, class assignments, basically. Those are the things that everybody loves to get that first Monday of the following week, which is this week, 8/24. there's going to be a lot of specific staff training sessions required, not just about health and safety, but also teaching and learning that are going to suck up those 3 professional development days. And by the way, and this is not something that everybody doesn't know, but there are a lot of other important things going on in the world. And we have some other trainings and things that we want to get to. And that's not the topic for tonight, but we're not ignoring them. And we're not going to ignore staff training on other important things. It's just that this has dominated our thought processes for the last, frankly, 3 months. And then first day of schools, August 31st. We're going to move off of this slide real quick. And that's the end of the presentation, where I guess I would probably stop sharing screen if everybody's okay with that, and just take questions. You good with that, Joe? That sound reasonable?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Jim, I just want to reiterate, and I know you're tired of hearing it already, but from having a student that just graduated, for the option for the high school with the hybrid situation, I truly believe that we need to find a way to do the camera situation where every student is having a class every day, because I will tell you, especially the seniors, but not just the seniors, that if they are in school 2 days a week and you are expecting work from them the other 3 days, for 83% of them, they're not doing that work those days. They are going to skate by with doing as little as possible. And if there is nothing put in place where we are holding them accountable, they are going to get not a very good education. And I'm going to say especially the seniors, especially the second half of senior year, like last year, that they just won't do it. So I think that the best thing that we can do for them, for the secondary level, is find a way to do this where we're doing a camera, and even if you're home that day, you're getting the same lesson that the kids in the classroom are getting, and you're being held accountable, and you're having your tests, and you're doing what needs to be done, and you're participating in class every single day. I think if we try to do it any other way, they're not going to get the education that they need to get.
Okay.
So a couple things. One is that even if we do have the camera option in place, I think people need to recognize that the quality of what you're seeing through whatever the camera setup's going to be will not be as good as actually being in the classroom. I mean, so that's number one. But I guess regarding senior perspective on that, I mean, we have 2 seniors or rising seniors on the call with us here. I'd like to hear, I guess, Olivia and Paige's perspective on the hybrid model that we've talked about, and the prospect of like the cameras for the days that you're not actually in class. Olivia or Paige, any thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I think I agree with Ms. Walsh. I mean, I personally would still do the work, but I definitely know that like a lot of my peers, it can be really hard to focus and get that motivation when you're not in school and you're not like right there with your teacher and with everyone, especially like for kids that have already been accepted into colleges. And then as far as the hybrid option, yeah, I really liked what Mr. Bliefeld was saying about trying, if we can, to get the cameras in there. I know that's what the school that my dad works at is doing. And I just think that that's a good way to keep everyone together, make sure that they're in the same place. The kids that are home for a certain day, if the other half of kids are in school, are like right there in the same lesson, can go in the next day with questions for their teacher about whatever happened exactly in that class. I also think that like making sure that stays the same, like if I'm getting the same lesson as my peers in school on a Monday, and then they're getting the same lesson as me on a Tuesday, it probably makes it easier for the teacher as far as like with assessments, because we're all getting exactly the same lesson. We're all on the same page about the material. So you're not going to get one class that knows this concept really well and another class that isn't, because for some reason you missed something on a certain lesson day.
Well said, Olivia.
Paige, do you have anything to add?
Oh, sorry, I cut out for a minute. I'm assuming it's about the cameras.
Oh, yeah.
I completely agree with Olivia, and I think that if we have the cameras in class, it's really going to be more beneficial, because I know personally when we were doing just the assignments over the the end of the last school year, it was a lot harder to keep yourself motivated, and I also felt like I wasn't necessarily learning as much as I would if I was in an in-person session. And personally, for my teachers, I didn't really have a lot of synchronous classes, and I felt that that was kind of a downfall. And I think that if we can keep the kids on a schedule, even when they're at home, they're going to benefit so much more, because I know I wasn't on a schedule in the spring and I suffered from that. So I think that that's something really important, especially for kids in middle school and the kids that are transitioning into 9th grade with the heavier course load.
Let me jump in for a second, please. And I think Olivia and Paige's insights are awesome there, as usual. One of the things, I don't want us to get too far down this road without first running ideas by teachers and the teachers union. And the reason I say that is because I don't want to have them end up being the reason we do or don't do something. I mean, we're definitely going to have the conversation as soon as possible. And I know many are dialed in tonight, so I want to, in a sense, speak up for them to say, there may be elements of this that we, in this call right now, don't perceive. So let's just hold that open as a very real possibility. And please know that we will definitely confer with teacher leaders and union leadership and report back what we find out.
That's fair.
Jim, if I may.
Marshall, before you get there, I just wanted to say that we have a second public comment period after this discussion wraps up, where we are going to review the comments that have come in and have been submitted to us since the start of the meeting. And at this point, there have been well over 50 additional emails that have come in, which is quite a lot. And I think I want to make a commitment to give airtime to all the people who submitted questions or comments. But at this point, I'm going to close the window for any more additional emails for tonight. As I said, we've gotten 50 plus, and I think that's ample for this evening. So with that being said, Marshall?
I simply want to just add, with a lot of the comments we've been making about trying to figure out how to best do this, we are beyond the point of eliminating risk. We're not going to eliminate risk. It's clear from a large percentage of our families that they want in-class learning. We also have a large percentage that doesn't. So what we are doing is essentially trying to reduce the risk. And if we can simply focus on finding ways of reducing the risk the best we can, I think that's our best course of action. Our teachers are on the front line, and I understand we need to run this by them. I think we need to know what they're thinking and how they feel about this. But if we implement some of the things we've talked about tonight, I think we're going to do our best to reduce the potential of risk to everybody. And I think that is how we need to vote on this. Because as a board of 9, we're not just voting for our own families and our own children. I have a child in this school district, but I can't simply sit here and say, I'm going to vote for the best interest of my child. Our oath was to do what's in the best interest of every parent, student, administrator, teacher, no matter whether they're in school or going home to their caregivers. So we have to look at everything from the perspective of reducing the risk to everybody as much as we can and providing the best opportunity under those circumstances. And I think some of the things we discussed tonight will help in that regard. And I know there's a lot of frustration. It's a long meeting. A lot of people are hearing things for the first time. A lot of people are throwing up their hands. But the fact of the matter is, we're not dealing with a once a week episode, a once a year episode, even a once in a generation episode. This is a once in a century experience. Hopefully we'll be out of in a year or so if we're being honest about it. But we're just trying to do something to help everybody through this. And I hope everybody understands that. I like all the questions everybody's been asking. They've asked the right questions, a lot of questions and a lot of comments. And if we just stick to that, to making sure that we're all in it together, we're all on the same page. And I think that's what everybody has to understand, is that as a group, we all want the same thing. We want the best education for our kids, and we want to keep everybody safe as best we can. Not everybody's going to be happy. We have 4,000 students, which means 4,000 voices and almost as many opinions. But I think we can do the best we can by simply saying, how can we best do this for everybody in a way that reduces the potential for risk as we get everybody back to school the best we can. And I just thought we needed to offer that. Thanks.
Well said, Marshall. And actually, I think we're at 5,000 students, so even more voices and opinions out there. But again, those sentiments, I think we're spot on. Thanks. Amy?
Thank you. I just had a couple questions. In terms of the K through 5 synchronous learning, would there be an opportunity, and this, Gary, maybe best for you to answer, for parents to maybe see what that's going to look like have a sample, a day where they can go online and see what that would look like? Like I know for myself and just my experience as a parent this past spring, I have a kindergartner and second grader, and having them sit there even for the 1 or 2 hours per week was a lot for them. I had to sit there with them to make sure they stayed at the computer and didn't wander off. So having an understanding of what that's going to look like sitting there with your child for several hours during the day, or making sure your child is capable, especially since they're not going to be able to switch because they don't like it. I'm just wondering if that's a possibility to give them like a sample of what that's going to look like.
I think we could certainly provide a sample of what the schedule would look like. It frankly would not look much different than a school day with the child proceeding and come into class. They're in an English class and they begin with a lesson with the teacher, they opening with attendance and what our day is going to look like. They may do a short mini lesson with the students, maybe have some questions and answers, and then they might put them in small groups to do work together, or they may send them off to do a task for 15, 20 minutes and then bring them back as a class and talk about what they did. This is a stretch. We realize this, especially for the youngest children, the early childhood section. But one of our challenges is we're expected to maintain instructional pace and meet the instructional hours and requirements by the state over the course of the year. So it's not like we can do a reduced time of like 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day. We've got to ensure that there's lunch break. We've got to ensure there's mid-morning break or an afternoon break. Got to put the encore class in so there's a little bit of a diversion from academic to a little bit more like art, music, PE, these different things. So I think it probably is difficult for parents to imagine. And frankly, for us, it's difficult for us to imagine what it looks like for a young kindergartner or first grader to do this. But it is an expectation moving forward that we are going to do synchronous instruction, that the teacher will be there interacting with the students, much like they do in class. It will not look much different or feel different to the student, other than the fact that they're doing it through a screen. And that has its own quirks, we know.
Okay.
Sorry.
My next question was, as parents, how are we going to, and I apologize, I don't think this was mentioned earlier, but how are we going to be notified if there is a positive COVID case in the class? Will there be a letter sent home, like someone has pink eye, but it's going to say someone in the class has COVID?
Yes, we would not include names, of course, but we would say a student in this and such class has been tested positive for COVID, and that student has privacy rights. So of course we wouldn't say who it is, but just like other situations, you can infer things, and that's when the contact tracing comes into play too. Is we have to contact tracers have to do interviews with people. This is really a labor intensive exercise. So contact tracers will know names and will actually call others, and will have to use that name in order to trace. So the official notification will go out, and quite frankly, I was using this in a different context, but I have noticed that in the spring, you recall, we had a case of COVID and the whole school was going to shut down for a day for cleaning, right? Before the state shut everything down. Okay, departments of health have gone quite a far way away from that now. And it's not going to be like that. It's going to be the student who tests positive is out. Whoever was in close contact with that definition of 6 feet or less for 10 minutes or more will be out for quarantine. And then the next day, back to school. Everyone except for those people who have to be removed, back to school. So that's decidedly different than the mindset that was prevalent in the spring with departments of health, back when we didn't know as much about this as we did.
And are we going to have like counselors on staff? Or obviously, it will be upsetting, I think, for students if you find out someone in your class has COVID, or someone for them to talk to if they do have any sort of stress or anxiety related to this.
Well, we will have our normal array of guidance counselors, particularly at the K-5 level. They know the students and are awesome with them. I hadn't thought of COVID-specific counselors. We would have our district physician, who's really, really good with this, at the ready, but that's not really counseling as much as it is medical. I guess my answer is we would meet the mental health needs of all of our students just like we normally do as best we can.
And will they have assigned seats to, again, aid with contact tracing if necessary?
Yeah, that's a good question on the busing. We have not contemplated assigned seating.
Yeah,
they need to.
Yeah, so what we're very, very likely to do is to reduce contact. The first people on the bus have to go all the way to the back so that you're not passing everybody on the way. So first student's on, going to be in the back, then the back other seat, and then the next seat, and then going forward. So if you're the last person on the bus, theoretically, you're going to be going on to one of the first benches as opposed to walking past everybody on the way back to that'll eliminate some distancing.
And that will include kindergartners also, who traditionally sit at the front of the bus?
It will probably be able to take that into consideration. And then obviously we will also have families together as much as possible. So it's likely that if you have a kindergartner and a third grader, we're going to make you sit together.
And this is a different question now, will we have a location where we can refer families to for testing? Like if somebody is exposed, that we'll be able to say, this is the location to go to get your testing done?
We will have information like that, but one of the things that's not decided yet is exactly what role the family physician is going to play in all of this. I should say the healthcare provider of the family. There's some suggestion that the family physician will decide if a test is required or not, and there's another suggestion that says the district shall require it. That's one of those pieces in that chart I was referring to that needs to get nailed down for sure. It's kind of a minor point, but on the other hand, we've come across families who understandably get very, very upset when their family healthcare provider is out of the loop and a decision is made for them. So I think that's where the Montgomery County Department of Health is struggling, because they know that and they want to respect that piece. But on the other hand, they want to make some definitive answers so people know exactly what will happen. So that will be in that chart that we're trying to get clarity on between now and Monday.
Can I just interject something here? Because of the hour, it's 10 o'clock at night. And Paige and Olivia have been so patient and so helpful. It is their summer break. I think that we should let them off of this meeting so that they don't feel obligated to have to sit here and still listen to us.
That sounds fair to me. Paige and Olivia, unless you guys have any final questions or comments, thanks for joining us this evening, and yeah, you guys can feel free to drop off.
Thank you. We appreciate that. We do have one thing that we want to add before we leave. First of all, from both of us, thank you. We can completely appreciate what a complex and difficult situation this has been to navigate. And we're really thankful for everything that you're doing and all the hard work and thought that you're putting into organizing this for us. But with that said, like Dr. Christian said earlier, there's other things going on that we can't just gloss over because this is really complicated. So Paige and I would be remiss not to bring up the community conversation that took place yesterday on racial issues within the district. I spoke with Mr. Antonio there, and I know that several of you attended virtually. And I'm hoping that in an upcoming meeting, we can have a serious discussion regarding the concerns presented by the students at the meeting and the changes that they suggested, which I know will be presented as an official petition by the end of the month. Again, I know that the concerns addressing COVID and the roadblocks that brings makes it a particularly difficult time administration-wise, but I think this issue is too pressing not to immediately begin working to address the serious and extensive issues within our schools. One particular issue that I can speak to from my own personal experience and observation is the severe lack of Black and Latinx students in our gifted program, as well as our advanced placement classes, which is definitely something that surrounding communities have struggled with and continue to struggle with. And we looked into this a little bit at the meeting where we discussed the achievement gap, but I think it's an issue that needs to be targeted and addressed among staff more directly. And we know, like as a community, as a country, and colleges are focusing on it too, that diversity really benefits everyone, and nowhere is that more true than in a learning setting. So I think it's really important that the conversation started by students and community members on Sunday is continued by the board very soon.
As well, we really do urge you to continue the conversation. And we also ask that the board acts upon the concerns brought up by the students. As student school board representatives, it is our job to help voice the student body's concerns. And being that the community conversation was spearheaded by both alumni and present students, we cannot stress enough how important it is to us that we enact change that directly influences the students involved. If you were not able to attend the community conversation, either in person or virtually, we strongly suggest that you watch the live stream. The link is tinyurl.com/community conversation live. I don't know if you can see it here. All one line. Once again, it's tinyurl.com/community conversation live. The stories that were shared were incredibly powerful and helped provide perspective on something that many of us do not have personal experience with. And for those that would like to view and sign the petition, if you could, I wrote this one down too. Oh my word. You could go to tinyurl.com/WSD anti-racism petition. Here I have it written down. Once again, it's tinyurl.com/WSD anti-racism petition. And we're hoping that the demands listed could be added to a consequent meeting agenda once it is officially submitted as a petition.
Thanks, Olivia and Paige. Yeah, I mean, what you said, I think is spot on. The event yesterday, just not to beat around the bush, was about anti-racism and, making Wissahickon as a school district more inclusive and a place of more racial equity for all students, in particular our Black and Brown students. And it's an important topic that I want to actively engage in the coming months. And obviously school reopening is something we have to deal with right now because it's very urgent and pressing, but I don't want us to lose sight of this issue and this topic. And I look forward to hearing more from students, as well as the speakers, the recent alums at the event on Sunday to address us and dialogue with us as a board in August or September, certainly in the coming months, because I don't want us to lose sight of this very important topic. And I want us to be able to make some positive change towards ending anti-racism in the district. So thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, have a good night. And,
yes, you too.
All right, see you guys later.
Have
Bye-bye.
a good one.
Paige or Olivia, before you leave, if one of you could send us the links that you have to the board, that would be helpful.
Oh yeah, I can send an email
I don't know
right
if you
now.
had a chance to write that down, but if you could just send that to us in an email, that would be great.
Perfect. Thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thanks, guys.
All right.
Bye.
Have a great night.
Okay, after that brief interlude, any additional questions or comments or discussion about the school reopening plans?
I have a question.
Sure,
Jim,
Ryan.
do we know how many kindergartners are going to be coming or going to be in virtual kindergarten whenever, whatever? Do we have an idea of who those families are?
We have a list of people who told us at some point in time they'd like to come to us for kindergarten, yes. At this time of year, we're normally fully engaged with kindergarten screening and in processing. And that's been slowed to a crawl for obvious reasons. So the answer is yes, we have names, and I hope we have since fixed the point about having them get district emails and invitations to surveys and whatnot. And actually, enrollment generally, not just kindergarten, but K to 12 is vexing at this point. And I'm not too sure how that will play out in the next 6 weeks. I just have this feeling that people are going to be coming and going more this year. And so incoming kindergarten is always the wild card, but this year I think we have all grades as a wild card, and we're just trying as best we can to communicate with them and confirm coming back or not. But I just think people are going to be changing.
I think you're right.
Anyone else? Yeah, Amy?
I just had one more question. Sorry. I know I had a long list. For those that are choosing to keep their kids home and do the virtual option, what are we doing to make sure that they still feel like a part of the Wissahickon community? Like, will there be like regular newsletters sent home? Will they be included in spirit days to the extent we have them? To the extent we have extracurriculars? Or are we going to try to include them in virtual extracurriculars? Like, how will we make them feel included?
Our intention is to have them be in every respect a Wissahickon student. I don't know, Gary, do we have anything more like definitive than that?
Not really at this point. We haven't really talked about some of those things. I mean, I think at the elementary, the K-6 virtual option will certainly feel more included because they are really part of the same system, experiencing the same learning, connected with a teacher from the district. That'll make it more so. And certainly we would try to do the kinds of things we do in a regular classroom and in a school and include to make them involved. So whether we're doing a kindness focus or something like that, we would want to extend that to the virtual option there as well. I think with the academy, it's a little more difficult to do that. I think with the 7 to 12, because they would be experiencing a standards-based program, but it would be different than what kids are getting in the school day. But we certainly could think about that. I mean, the schedule still allows for us to bring students together and have academic periods at the middle school and to have IE times at the high school. So we would still be looking for opportunities, and we could certainly involve students who are in an asynchronous program to join in with those events, even though they're not necessarily in the programming of the high school directly.
Okay.
I know that one of the things coming off the spring, Amy, that we were very, very clear about was that the students needed to have that social interaction, have that connection to one another. And so in the synchronous push that we're putting forth now, it's really recognizing that our kids need to learn together. They need to be interacting with one another. They need to collaborate with one another, do projects together, and engage in class discussions and build that sense of community. So that's got to be there. And certainly it's something for us to be challenged to do for all of our students, regardless of what option they're in.
And the students that currently do traditional homeschooling, not through our virtual academy, but do traditional homeschooling, do we allow them to participate in our activities at our school?
Yes, so a student who is involved in the homeschooling through the state, basically. I mean, we help to facilitate the process, but Essentially, it's a parent-directed program that's put forth to the state, and they have an opportunity to apply to engage in extracurricular activities, sports, drama, theater, musical programming. They can be a part of all of that in Wissahickon. The Wissahickon Virtual Academy students also have those options. We have them complete like a sort of a registration form of sorts, not to register with the district, but to just give us all the health information. So when they're on site, we have all the information about the youngster we need to be sure that we would know what to do in a case of an emergency or things like that. But yes, they're fully involved and able to be a participant in all facets of our extracurricular and sports program.
Thank you. And my last question, what are we doing as far as symptom screening? Is this going to be something that the teachers are trained on during one of their training sessions in August? If we're not doing temperature checks, like what are we doing to check for symptoms?
I'm sorry, doing about what kind of training, Im?
Symptoms, like understanding what the symptoms are of COVID. Teachers can identify and know when to send the student to the nurse because it's concerning that the student might have symptoms of COVID.
Yeah, we have, that's part of that in-service week. The week of the 24th is all teachers back. The week of the 17th is new staff only. And so the new staff only week won't have that, but the next week will. And we got to carve out time for yet another thing with our scarce professional development time. But this is important, obviously.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, sounds like that's a wrap for board member questions. Now, I guess we're then on to the second public comment period. As I alluded to earlier, we, during the course of the meeting, have received in excess of 50 additional emails with comments from the public. Unfortunately, there is going to be some degree of overlap in terms of individual people's comments and questions because people are not aware of what other people are submitting. Wade was kind enough to compile all of the submitted questions into one document, and I'm going to run through those comments. And at some point when my voice is starting to give out, I'm going to ask to hand the reins to one of my other fellow board members, and maybe we could sort of tag team the remainder of the questions. If you guys check on your email inbox, you should see an email from Wade earlier this evening, just a little while ago, that has a Word document where he attempted to consolidate all the emails that we received during the meeting. So if you can open that up and follow along, that would be helpful.
Joe, I would just say, in some of these, it looks like some of these we've answered already. So it's like, as far as face coverings, will schools permit mask, gaiters, or shields, or only masks? Like, there's going to be some that we've already answered. And I think if somebody starts reading it and realizes that it's already been answered, I don't think we should waste the time and read the whole question of a question that's already been answered.
That's fair. Okay, so with that, I'll take the first batch of comments that have been submitted. And then, as I said, at some point, I'm going to hand it over to Tracy. I'll hand it off to you.
Okay.
Since you didn't get the pleasure of reading some of the questions in the first round.
Woohoo.
Okay. So in the list, I noticed in the first few that were in the document that Wade put together, there was actually some overlap with the first document we had. So the first new additional question is from Stephanie Crowley, or comment, I should say. And it's stated as follows. For the sake of transparency, if there was a reason that synchronous learning sessions were not provided for the high school students this spring, please let us know what it was. And additionally, due to the nature of the high school building, narrow hallways, the knuckle, and many classrooms that do not have windows, are ventilation issues being taken into account. 100% capacity in the high school makes consistent and sustained social distancing unachievable. Why was the 100% in-person option chosen instead of the hybrid option? And what is the contingency plan for the situation of being shut down again? Will such plan include another 2-week break for students? Again, submitted by Stephanie Crowley. So I guess this is one where I think was largely answered during the course of the discussion. And I think was submitted probably in advance of realizing that we are doing the hybrid option for high school students. The next one is a pretty lengthy one from Beth Danoff, and it's a series of questions. Starts with number one: if we have more than one child in the district and we need to keep one child home sick, will the requirement be we must keep siblings home as well? Similarly, if a parent or other member of the household is sick, will children be required to stay home? Same if a COVID test for a member of a household is pending. 3, will parents be notified if there is a positive case in their class and or be required to quarantine? How will this be handled? What are the thresholds school will be using to determine if it's safe to stay open if community spread increases or there is an increasing number of cases at a specific school? If a child is in a brick and mortar school program but needs to quarantine due to exposure but is not sick themselves, will he/she be transitioned to a virtual learning class, or will they simply be missing class for those 14 days? If it is determined that schools need to close due to community spread, how will children be transitioned to virtual learning? Specifically, will schools just decide that day and close? Is there a plan in place? 7, are you able to provide a basic outline for what in-person in elementary school will look like? Will classes be held outside at all? Will kids remain in their classrooms all day? Will lunch be in the classroom? How many bathrooms for those classes that don't have one in their classroom be handled? Will recess be outside? Will children be at their desks for the majority of the day? How will arrival and dismissal be handled with social distancing guidelines? 8, if your child gets sick at school, will you be required to come get that child and any other children you have in the district? 9, will I absolutely understand the district? While I absolutely understand the district needs time to plan and is therefore asking for parents to make a decision on in-person or virtual a month out, if something happens in that month, which is a long time given the rapidly changing nature of this disease, that makes us need to change our decision, will the school honor that? 10, can you please make clear the dates of the first semester that is being discussed/committed to? Again, submitted by Beth Danoff. So Tracy, I think this is a part of the challenge of determining whether or not the questions have been answered when it's a long laundry list of questions. But I believe most of these were addressed during the course of our discussion as well. The next is from Leslie Powell. What is the process to participate in family focus groups? Will students be required to obtain COVID antibody testing before the start of school? The next is another one from Stephanie Crowley.
This looks like it's like a repeat of some of it, but then like the blue area, I think, is the new stuff.
Okay, so yeah, I think the new portion is for safety reasons. I feel that classrooms without windows should not be used. I feel that the hybrid option offers the best balance of safety for the students with in-person teaching and should be the option chosen for the fall. I feel that the school district should prepare a contingency plan now for the eventuality that the schools will need to close again in the fall. This plan should include synchronous distance learning for core classes at a minimum and not through the Montgomery County IU, but by Wissahickon School District teachers. There should not be a 2-week break for students before distance learning commences should it become necessary. The next one is from Kat Myers. Thanks for your time. What do you say to those parents who do not approve of mask use and will unenroll their children from your school and instead move to public cyber charter school specifically because of your mask requirements? And the next one is, let's see, it looks like a pretty lengthy one and not clear who it's from, but it's really long.
Yeah, I think that one would be over the 3 minutes, honestly.
I will jump down to the tail end where it starts with the paragraph. In short, it is time to reopen our schools. The risk of keeping children out of school are well known, including serious deterioration of future educational achievement to deterioration of mental and physical health. The risk of children contracting COVID-19 and having significant health issues is very, very low. The risk of children dying from COVID-19 is essentially non-existent. According to the Pennsylvania Department of Health, as of July 11th, there have been no deaths, 0, due to COVID-19 in individuals under the age of 20 in the entire state of Pennsylvania. The flu has been more deadly for the underage 20 population than COVID-19. It goes on with some additional statistics, and I think it closes with, this is an educational crisis for our children. Our children are not at a health risk due to COVID-19 or are at a major educational and mental health risk due to school closures. Our children must go back to school. And that is from Stephen Lau. The next one is, has the district considered / implemented HVAC system improvements such as additional filters or UV treatment? And that's from Leah Gaffney. The next one is from Shoshana Murray, and it is, what is the point of reading questions at the board meeting if no responses are given? I find it extremely frustrating and a waste of time.
Can I just say that we do give answers, that they are.
Yeah, and just as an editorial aside, given the volume of responses we had, I think it would be impractical, I think, to try to answer each of these in sequence. And especially since several of them have overlapping or very similar questions. The next one is from Eric Bellis. Saw Stony outside is all torn up. Will it be ready for 8:31? Can you please provide a brief plan for outside play and learning as a result of the construction to ensure the kids' safety? The next one is from Lena Booker. The LA and San Diego Unified School Districts announced today that those districts will be virtual next year to prevent school from becoming a petri dish for infection. What would be the target or threshold in terms of teachers, staff, and students testing positive for COVID-19 that would automatically result in a district closure for WSD? The global response to COVID has resulted in greater success in other countries. The models include more outdoor teaching opportunities, including building tents and large outdoor spaces, as well as joining with teachers, parents, assistants, and staff to create smaller indoor learning spaces for our children. Can the district provide more outdoor teaching spaces across all grade levels in the district? Okay, and the next one is from Anthony Scalise. When Bluebell Elementary was closed this past semester, both our sons, Anthony and Raphael, experienced academic and social connection challenges. Lisa and I are both essential frontline healthcare employees, and we are not available to provide home educational instruction to our children. For CDC guidelines, schools are able to be opened. We are please imploring to have in-person instruction available for all our children, as other neighboring school districts are providing this as an option for parents who are essential employees. And this next one is quite long.
I think this is more of a letter about the racial injustices going on right now. So I don't know if we want to read the whole thing or if we just want to post this one.
Yeah, this is one from Devin Boatwright, and yeah, this is in regards to the community event on anti-racism that happened yesterday, and it is an important letter, and the topic is a significant and important one for us as a district. But in the interest of time and given tonight's topic, can we save this, Jim and Wade, to include as a comment in a subsequent meeting? Let's say in August to address after we've kind of gotten past the whole school reopening issue. But I don't want us to lose sight of this one.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Great, thanks. Okay, so the next comment was from Allison Scudda, or Scuda. One, I heard some districts are considering having older kids do cyber school. WVA would be perfect, we already have it, while allowing younger kids to spread out in the middle and high schools for better social distancing. Thoughts? This would solve a lot of care issues for working parents. Older kids can fend for themselves. Two, if kids go to school and the school closes, what will be different for them versus kids who chose the virtual option in the first place? And three, will you share the results of the last survey? And then, let's see, this next one is from Denise Brown. I'm not expecting this to be a perfect production, but this does not feel conducive to answering the many great questions that parents are asking. Why not maybe present something new tonight on the proposed plan and then give us a period of time to send questions, or maybe send all of these parent questions a few days prior to the meetings so that we can review them. We are over 30 minutes into tonight's call and we have no more answers than we did at the top of the hour. Like many parents, my wife and I were anxious for tonight's meeting because top of our minds is trying to make an educated decision regarding the fall. Thank you, Dennis Brown. Let's see, the next one is, well, this person says, I guess, that they want to be confidential. Um, and I think it's another complaint about the amount of time spent up front reading all the submitted questions is the gist of it. The next one is from Shannon Taylor. Thank you so much for all of your hard work. I know this is not an easy task to figure out. Please see my questions below. Again, thank you so much. As a teacher in the county, if my district chooses online learning for my students, I would like to keep my children home for me for virtual learning. If at some point it is decided then that I then have to do in-person learning, I would then have to send my kids to in-person school. I think it is unfair to make parents choose and lock themselves into a decision so early and then not allow them to switch later. To piggyback on that, if I'm exposed at my own school, would I then need to contact my children's Wissahickon School District school and keep them home to quarantine as well? And that's from Shannon Taylor. The next one is from Matthew Coop. It's very short. I appreciate you reading them all, but maybe limit it to one comment per person per email. Thank you. All right, something to consider, I think, for future meetings. The next one is from Leah Johns. If the high school students must attend virtually because a sibling and or parent has a compromised immune system, how does that high school student who might have an IEP receive that extra help from a random stranger at the Montgomery County College instead of working virtually with teachers and guidance counselors who know them, who will give them accommodations? Going to school is dangerous, yet being schooled by non-WIS teachers, or going to school is dangerous, yet being schooled by non-WIS teachers. I'm just reading this verbatim. The next question or comment is from Amy Hughes. This meeting with 12 pages and 50 minutes of comments is ineffective. Why can't the board investigate the Roberts Rule of Order and vote to change the format? You could post the questions and it would be far less painful than hearing redundant and poorly read question, allowing more time for actual answers. Again, from Amy Hughes. The next is from Grace Lee. We know there is no precedence for this and are thankful for all that you are doing. There is no perfect answer, and know you are trying to make the best decision possible. The next is from Carolyn Tatko. How is this going to be divided? I have a 7th grader and 10th grader and would like to make sure that they were in school together and home together. If it is by last name, this would take care of it. Is this the plan? The next is, it looks like another one from Amy Hughes. It is clear that at least some members of the board are not / were not aware of these changes to the options. They are clearly looking to admin for answers. Does this board understand that the board makes the decision, not administration? I will be reaching out to all board members directly tomorrow. The next one is another one from Allison Scuda. Actually, it looks like a repeat of the earlier one. And the next one looks like another comment from Leah Johns. A hybrid for K-5 issue. Why couldn't you use a hybrid model where A to L kids attend for 2 days, Wednesday off for all students for cleaning, but learning at home, and then M to Z kids attend Thursday and Friday, and virtual assignment for the days they aren't in the classroom. These options are not okay for kids with special needs or medical issues. Also, why can't we do synchronous learning for high school students? The next is, we have another one from Carolyn Tatko. Hi, it seems that now middle and high school are hybrid. I teach in another district. You said below that you are in lockstep with other districts in the area. Is this still the case?
Joe.
Next. Yes.
I'm going to say it's 10:30.
Yep.
And I have work tomorrow. So I think that we should adjourn this meeting and not read the rest of these questions. The answers should be posted onto the website. And we do have to figure out a better way to do this because we can't, this is like torture. We can't do this to people or ourselves.
And I do not disagree with you. I think a better approach might be rather than people who submit comments just posing questions with an expectation that there will be some kind of dialogue or some direct answer. We could maybe go back into the format that we used in the past where people from the public, when we have the in-person meetings, could make a statement or provide comments to the board. But again, it was not structured to be like a like an ongoing discussion or an exchange or a dialogue. So,
And if you think about it too, at a meeting, we limit how many people can come up and talk about the same subject.
yeah.
So I think we need to do that right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think looking through the consolidated list of comments, and again, 50 plus emails that were received, there are a lot of frequent flyers in the comments and questions. And it's sort of turned into like a message board or like comments on like a social media stream as opposed to public comments or statements to the board. So, yeah. But you know, I mean, it's a lesson learned, and we're evolving in a new environment, operating virtually. But I appreciate your perspective.
So I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, I see Ronnie and Ron second the meeting. Okay. Any discussion?
I just want to thank all of the parents that sent emails in, and we are not dismissing those, but I do need to get up for work tomorrow, and they will be answered, just not read tonight. That's all.
Yeah, that's fair. And in fairness, I think a lot of the questions, even the ones I just read out, as well as the ones that are below that in the list, were questions that were to some degree answered in Jim's presentation and the subsequent discussion.
Before we adjourn, let me just set expectations. As we were talking, we are unable to actually answer the questions submitted. If they weren't answered tonight, we need the people to please reach out to building principals who will get the answer more quickly to the people who ask, because I think it's very important. But I don't want expectation of there being a Q&A or FAQ.
Right.
Yeah, it's too much volume.
Okay. I appreciate that. That's fair. All right. Any other comments before I take a vote to adjourn the meeting? All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. The meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you for everyone who attended this. We had at one time 514 people.
That's just on Zoom. There was a lot more on YouTube.
That's what I'm saying. Right.
Yep.
Amazing.
Good night.
Good night.